Progressive presents Mindfulness with Flow.
Before you lies a beautiful meadow. In that meadow, Progressive Direct has placed its auto insurance rates alongside those of competitors. You select the lowest rate and feel a great sense of calm. A great sense of...
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates so you can rest easy. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Will we see another shock at the top of tonight's draft? Will the Joes be able to keep up with the pros? And how do tonight's drafters react to what they saw take place last night? Follow along with the live draft board tonight and listen to our live analysis as we call the live action from the 2017 Pros versus Joes Say My Name Division Number 2, brought to you by the FFPC, to see who will win a 2018 FFPC main event team valued at $1,750. We've got a great show for you. Dave Gerzak is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Thinking of a master plan. Cause ain't nothing but sweat inside my hands. So I dig into my pocket, all my money spent. So I get deeper, but still coming up with lint. So I start my mission, leave my residence. Thinking how could I get some dead presidents? I need money. I used to be a stick-up kid, so I think of all the devious things I did. 1, 2, 3, 4. I used to roll up, this is a hole up. Ain't nothing funny, stop smiling. We still don't nothing move but the money. But now I learned that.
Broadcast live and heard around the world. You are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for football analysis from the best fantasy players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak.
I don't like to dream about getting paid, so I dig into the books of the rhymes that I made. Soon as I test to see if I got pulled.
Good evening to you, Rob, and thank you very much. Greetings and salutations to the rest of you Balkaholics and Gerzak addicts. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is indeed the patron saint of fantasy football. You know him as the Dizzle. You also know him as Dave Gerzak. Coming up on tonight's show, it's a special one, once again. It is the second of 6 special episodes we have for you once again this year. It is the FFPC Pros versus Joes Say My Name Division Number 2 draft tonight, and we will be covering it for 2 straight hours commercial-free listening. I know that sounds great, but listen to us for 45 minutes and you will be begging for a commercial. Follow the live draft board tonight at youtube.com/highstakesfantasyfootball. Shout out to the chat room right now that we have going on in the Blog Talk Radio feed. Post your questions you might have in there. Connect with us on Twitter at HSFFHour, at Eric Balkman, or at David Gerzak this evening. You can obviously post on our Facebook page, facebook.com/HSFFHour. And if you want to give us a buzz tonight, please do so. 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVER. You can also email the show at the inbox, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you do have any questions for us or for tonight's participants, now's the time to send them. We have our audio engineer, Bryce, working hard, I believe also commissioning this draft online, and our producer and mutual friend, Rob, manning the buttons and the who's-y what's-its behind the glass tonight. We'll do our best to get to all the calls, chat room questions, tweets, and emails as we move through this 120-minute program. Before we get to the action, I do want to remind everybody that if you go to myffpc.com right now, you can sign up for the main event, which today is the last day to get in on the main event, to get your early draft slot more than a month ahead of time before you will be drafting. All you need to do is pay for your team in full, and you will get that done. It'll be done tonight, and then you'll get your draft slot sometime after next weekend. You can also check out all the best balls 100% with 100% payout, double-ups, dynasties, and more. Football Guys Players Championship, should mention that as well at myffpc.com. If you missed last night's draft, the Fat Stacks draft, you can check out the full draft board up at the FFPC message boards, also the FFPC and High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour Facebook and Twitter accounts. They are posted there. Dave? It is. We have one in the bag. Some surprises last night. The overall theme I got was that the pros really took the challenge head on last night and did a very good job overall.
Yeah, I think they actually hung in there pretty well.
I would say they did better than hang in there.
They might have done, in total, they might have done a little bit better than the Joes.
We saw some surprises last night. We'll have to see how tonight shakes out. I think it will also be equally as interesting. Let's get to the lineup here as we actually had a late substitution, so I want to make everybody aware of that. Leading off tonight is FFPC Joe Keith Douglas, followed by RotoWorld.com's Evan Silva in the 2 spot. Chuck Root, an FFPC player, is third, and of course fourth from RotoViz is Mike Beers. You might know him better on Twitter at BeersWater. You have Dan Thomas, former guest of this show, hitting fifth tonight. Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm, the Roto Buzz guy on Twitter, and he will be drafting sixth. Eric Young is the FFPC Joe in the 7 spot. Lord Reeves, Rich Rebar from Roto World, hitting eighth. Drew Maselli, another former guest of this show, is going to be drafting out of the 9 hole. A former co-host of this show, Izzy Elkafis from Dynasty Trade Calculator, he will be drafting out of the 10 spot.
I love Izzy's name. It's a cool name.
Great. His Twitter name?
No, his real name.
No. I know his real name, but I'm telling you, his Twitter name, @DLF_IzzyE.
Ah, see, that's
Isn't that great? Yeah, that's
awesome.
Even better. Brian Holgen, another former co-host, another former guest of this show. He's 11th, and then Tim McCullough and Scott Fish actually switch spots. So Tim McCullough will be drafting next week. Scott Fish from Fanball will be hitting 12th tonight. So that is your lineup. I got to tell you, Dave, all these lineups are really fantastic and exciting.
This is the best one.
I don't know. I'm not going to say it's the best one, but it is one that's there's a lot of intrigue for both the Joe's side of it and the pros side of it. A lot of interesting names here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really excited, actually.
Because normally you're not.
Normally I could care less, but this one, Balky.
But this is the one. This is the one, ladies and
my
gentlemen.
buddy Evan Silva, I like Evan a lot. He's a very great writer on Roto World.
Yep.
Dinner partner and pal, Drew Maselli.
Yeah.
He's in this draft, so that's great. There's some other fellows as well.
Yeah.
I don't want to call anyone else up by name, but I'll call those.
Those are the ones that
I'll specifically mention them.
So this draft is flying along. Let's get to the analysis here and quit boring people with our nonsense. Leading things off tonight, Keith Douglas. No surprise like we had last night with Le'Veon Bell going number 1 overall to Jeff Ratcliffe, but Keith Douglas takes David Johnson here. Le'Veon Bell goes 2 to Evan Silva. And Ezekiel Elliott does go 3rd to Chuck Root. We talked about this last night, the potential suspension looming over Elliott. It does not scare Chuck Root, and he takes Elliott there. Another non-shocker, Antonio Brown to Mike Beers at 4. Julio Jones is the second receiver off the board to Dan Thomas at 5. LaShawn McCoy, number 6 tonight to Howard Bender, a guy that has I don't want to say he's been all over the place in the first round, but I've seen him go anywhere from the early 2nd to all the way up to the 105 pick. So he's a guy that I think his ADP isn't really honed in yet, and you're seeing how polarizing a running back he can be. He goes 6th tonight, Odell Beckham, and A.J. Green go to Eric Young and Rich Rebar right after that. Rob Gronkowski tonight, Dave, is indeed the first tight end off the board, not Travis Kelce like we saw last night. Rob Gronkowski goes to Drew Maselli, your dinner partner, at 9. And then a bit of a surprise.
My paisano.
Your paisano. Bit of a surprise here. Izzy Elkafis. Let's talk about this pick. He goes DeAndre Hopkins at the 110. Now, this is where we were seeing Hopkins go last year. Maybe he was even going a little bit before that.
Slightly.
You're talking about last year.
Yep.
Yeah. And then this year, his ADP is 305. So now you would think that Izzy could have gotten him a little bit later. He goes with Hopkins at the 110. I am a little bit surprised. Do you think that he has it in him this year, Dave, to return 110 value?
But he's got a shot for sure. I mean, there's a possibility. And we'll talk about who he took in the 2nd round, but he could have flip-flopped those picks and probably, that would have been a little bit more similar to ADP, I would say.
Yeah. So that's that's the first real surprise of the night that we see. Mike Evans falls all the way to the 111 to Brian Holgen. And then Travis Kelce goes to Scott Fish. So 2 tight ends in the first round. That's a little surprising. We'll have to pay attention tonight, Dave, to see if this causes others to panic a little bit and make sure that they get an elite tight end, make sure they get a top 12 tight end. As we see, I don't want to give it away, but 2 more tight ends went in round 2. Getting right to it, Jay Ajayi is the turn pick for Scott Fish. Jay Ajayi goes to Scott Fish at the 201. Melvin Gordon is the 202, followed by Devontae Freeman. And Drew Maselli doubling up on tight ends to start off this draft. We've seen this done before.
Always got to be one.
Yeah, there's always got to be one. And tonight it is Drew Maselli who starts off tight end with Rob Gronkowski, followed by Jordan Reed. Michael Thomas goes to Rich Rebaugh right after that, and then Jordy Nelson after Michael Thomas. Leonard Fournette, another bit of a surprise.
One round earlier tonight.
Is that where he went last night?
Yeah, mid-third last
Mid-third, and he goes mid-second tonight. So Leonard Fournette to Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm. That's a little bit of a surprising pick. But if you look at the ADP, and I don't think this is that crazy, he goes at the 302. So, again, Fantasy Alarm, Howard Bender, probably not going to get a shot at Leonard Fournette. If you want him, you got to grab him here. And he gets two workhorses to start off his draft in LaShawn McCoy and Leonard Fournette. We'll have to see how he fills in the receiver part of it. And I should mention this to everybody, too. With the FFPC format, you start one quarterback, two running backs, two receivers, a tight end, a kicker, defense, and then two flexes. So if you only want to start two receivers, you only have to start two receivers.
And how does the scoring system work, Balky?
It's PPR. It has 1.5 points for tight ends.
Oh, so that's why they're being drafted earlier.
That is why they're being drafted earlier, in case anybody was wondering. This is a tight end premium format. I apologize.
Is this how other announcers do this, where they softball up questions to each other? Like just...
Yeah, but real announcers would have mentioned this before the actual draft analysis. Yeah.
Right.
So the thing is, like, we do so many of these, and I know how you get, and I don't want to be repeating myself right at the start of the draft for every draft. Be like, yeah, Balky, they get it, they know it.
Kind of like when you go on like ESPN, you watch the World Series of Poker, and I feel bad for them because they're always like, now to tell you how Texas Hold'em works, here we go, and they always have like the first 30 seconds, and it's like, oh, I know how it works, but there's the people who are tuning in for the first time, and they have to find out.
That's exactly right. We have, after Fournette goes T.Y. Hilton, and then DeMarco Murray going at the 209 tonight, followed by Jordan Howard. The fourth tight end off the board tonight is Greg Olsen, and then Keith Douglas finishing off round two. Takes Des Bryant there to go with David Johnson. So that is the first two rounds of action. Let's go to the phone lines and take our first phone call tonight. The 952 is live on the air with Dave and Balky. Who are we speaking to?
It's Izzy.
Izzy, but this is a perfect person to lead off the show with, because we really concentrated on your selection in the first round. Talk about why DeAndre Hopkins was your man at 110.
So I would have taken him on the turn. So it was a little bit of a mistake. I was getting my queue ready, and he was the guy that I clicked on first, so he kind of got drafted. But I would have taken him at the turn. What I really want to do is Ajayi Hopkins. But I made the mistake. I got Hopkins and Freeman, which I don't love, and I knew Scott Fish was going to take Ajayi if he was available. But I don't hate it. My plan always in drafts, is try to get guys that are relatively healthy for their careers. Hopkins has had a pretty good track record relative to a lot of the other big-name receivers. So I would like to get him at the turn because I knew he wouldn't make it all the way back in the third round. So I'm a big believer in just take the guys that, you believe in this year. And I think he will bounce back, maybe not to 2015 numbers, but I think pretty darn close.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously when it comes down to it, you think his 2017 is much, much closer. The real Hopkins that we saw was much closer to 2015 than what we saw last year with, Osweiler and whoever farting around throwing him the ball.
Yeah, I really do, and I think he's one of the better technicians in the league as a receiver. So I really have a lot of faith in Hopkins, and hopefully the Savage Watson combo platter that he's getting is going to be an upgrade over what he had last year. I know he had Savage for a little bit, but I'm hoping a full off season with Savage and Watson will have him bounce back. And he didn't have a great quarterback in 2015 either, so it's not like there's a huge upgrade or downgrade either way from 2015 to 2017.
Izzy Alkafas joins the show as we are covering the Pros vs. Joe Division number 2. I want to talk a little bit about your third-round pick, and we'll get to the third-round coverage in a little bit. But as long as we have Izzy on the blower here, let's talk about Brandon Cooks. He's a guy that I think has been pretty polarizing. If you read what a lot of people have to say, listen to what a lot of people have to say in the industry, a lot of people think he is in for a bonkers year with Tom Brady throwing him the football. And then you have other people worried that maybe there's too many mouths to feed on that offense with Gronk and Edelman and James White and what have you. Why are you a believer in Brandon Cooks having a big year this year, Izzy?
You know, what's funny is I'm actually kind of lower on him than most. I was just surprised he was there in the third, so it was more of a value play than anything. In a PPR, I don't know how they're going to use Brandon Cooks, and I expect them to use him as a field stretcher. So in a PPR format, I don't know if he's as exciting as, you know, people are making him out to be, but at 310, he's a steal there. I thought a guy like Doug Baldwin would fall to 310, and I would have taken Doug there. But I don't hate Cooks off the board. I think he's maybe wide receiver 15 in this draft, and I can see him having a 7-8 season, no problem for him.
Izzy Alkafas from the DynastyTradeCalculator.com, also Dynasty League Football. Izzy, we see 3 teams already that have doubled up on tight end. There's 6 tight ends gone, but only 3 teams own those tight ends. How concerned are you about making sure you don't get shut out as far as getting a good playmaking difference maker at tight end goes in this draft? Are you going to be revising any of your strategy, or did you kind of figure that the tight ends would go like this?
You know, it's kind of funny. When it comes to these premium leagues, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Scott Fishbowl, but in that league I was planning on punting tight ends, and they kept falling, so I ended up with Kelsey, Olsen, and Eifert, and that wasn't my plan. And in this, I was planning on maybe taking a snag at a Jimmy Graham in the 3rd round, but he got taken in the 2nd. With this many tight ends off the board, I'm not going to reach for one coming up. I'm just going to punt and try to get some guys that I believe in later in the draft, and see what kind of value I can manufacture with some flyers.
Makes sense. I like that.
Izzy, for the people who have been living under a rock, tell them what the Dynasty Trade Calculator is all about, and how it will help them run successful Dynasty leagues this year and every year.
Yeah, so it's we run a calculator that's more of an algorithmic approach. We try to take a lot of different aspects of dynasty values and put it into one. And of course, there are certain things that come into play when making a decision on a trade, but pure value in a vacuum is what we try to provide for our visitors. And right now it's completely free. We do have plans in the sometime near future to do some upgrades and other things with the calculator and some articles and so on and so forth. So we're trying to really take that next step. But our feedback is from a pure value perspective, we are the best calculator in terms of giving the most accurate of values. Now, from time to time, just like most calculators, we have things that we scratch our heads and be like, yeah, that's a little off. We got to adjust some things. But overall, it's a difficult thing to run because everything's always in flux and things are moving. But if you're looking for a quick, recap of a trade that you just recently made or an offer that you had and you're kind of on the fence, I think it helps make a decision for you.
It definitely has helped me over the years, and I certainly appreciate it. The co-founder of Dynasty Trade Calculator.
Well, I don't know, Bulky. What it does, let me just tell you.
Oh, God, here we go.
Bulky, he'll come over here and make me some trade offer, and I'll decline it, and then he'll whine about it. He'll be like, the trade calculator said it was an even trade. That's pretty much what the trade calculator has done for us, Bulky.
Yeah, we haven't made any deals since we've
it's actually a fantastic product.
Yeah. No, it is.
But
really
you do
good.
whine about it a lot.
But in my defense, I whine about everything a lot. So I just treat it like anything else. You can also read Izzy Alkafas' musings at DynastyLeagueFootball.com. Izzy, thanks so much. Hey, good luck the rest of this draft. I'm rooting for you. It looks like you got a really solid, core of a squad going. I certainly appreciate you calling in. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
Hey, thanks so much. Take care, guys.
Thanks.
Izzy Alkafas. Follow him on Twitter at DLF_IzzyE. And always great to hear from him, a fantastic Dynasty mind. I love the Dynasty Trade Calculator.
Could ask him about Easy E if you liked it as a fan or something.
Well, we could have done that, but we're going to get back to football.
Don't worry, someone else will call in like an hour.
Yeah. No, that's not how it's going to work. We're getting a bunch of calls this year, which I really appreciate. It definitely makes our jobs easier, and I think it definitely makes it more enjoyable for the listeners to hear from the people who are actually drafting. We left off with the 212 pick. That was Des Bryant. Right after that, leading things off in the 3rd round was Amari Cooper. Evan Silva doubles up on tight end. He gets Jimmy Graham to go with his Greg Olsen here in the 3rd round. Doug Baldwin and Todd Gurley follow those picks. And then Isaiah Crowell is the 305 selection tonight, followed by Keenan Allen, Demarius Thomas, and Sammy Watkins. We're actually going to be talking about the Sammy Watkins a little bit on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour this coming Friday. For those of you who are not familiar, we go live, blogtalkradio.com/HSFF every Friday, 10/9 Central. You usually get one, maybe two FFPC High Stakes players to come on, tell us what they're thinking, their thoughts, drafting, blind bidding, lineup setting, fantasy football stuff in general. We do it every week, and you can listen to it right on Blog Talk Radio. Also on iTunes, Google Play, Fantasy Sports Radio Network, and a lot of terrestrial stations around North America as well. So that is my plug. Dave is already giving me the evil eye. Enough there.
I think I fell asleep, actually.
Whatever. Ty Montgomery goes right after Sammy Watkins. Ty Montgomery is the first non-tight end selected by Drew Maselli tonight. He gets Ty Montgomery at the 309. Brandon Cooks, we already talked about him to Izzy. And then Lamar Miller and Kyle Rudolph finish off the round. Kyle Rudolph to Scott Fish. And you know, Kyle Rudolph is a guy who had a fantastic season last year, and if you got him in drafts, I'm sure that he outperformed what you paid for him. In drafts in the FFPC this year, he's actually going at the 409, and Scott Fish gets him at the 312. So, again, not coming back to him, but it still seems weird to see Kyle Rudolph, Dave, at the 312 selection in a high-stakes, high-stakes format draft.
Yeah, I totally agree. And on top of that, then Fish comes back with Lions quarterback Jake
Rudock. That was the real surprise of the draft. Yeah,
I had to look him up, and I guess he looks a little bit bigger and a little bit better.
Yeah,
more opportunities as the number 2 quarterback behind Matt Stafford. Why would he take the backup ahead of Stafford?
Well, I think you're looking at a quarterback controversy here in Detroit. Nobody's talking about it. Scott Fish, obviously, with the inside intel here.
He's a smart fellow.
Yeah, it's taking Rudock, and he probably figured with all these sharks in this draft,
off the board.
He wasn't getting Rudock back in the 5th, so he had to take him there. No, it was a bit of an error there, so he got that selection back. Took Joe Mixon at the 401.
That makes a little more sense.
Which makes a little bit more sense than Jake Rudock. Far be it from me.
Wouldn't it be funny, though, if Stafford got hurt in the second week of preseason, and Rudock just had a fantastic
quasi-MVP season?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Scott Fish knew it all along. Aaron Rodgers is Rudock, by the way, would have been the first quarterback off the board.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is the first quarterback off the board at the 402 tonight to Brian Holgen. And then Christian McCaffrey is, I believe, the second rookie running back, Dave? No, third rookie running back behind Mixon. McCaffrey goes to Izzy Alcafis in the 4th round. Jarvis Landry and Allen Robinson are the selections after that. C.J. Anderson and Marshawn Lynch go right after that. Marshawn Lynch to Team 6. That's Howard Bender from FantasyAlarm.com.
Did you see the Roto-World news?
I did.
Evan Silva about Marshawn Lynch.
I did. He's actually, the report from a beat reporter out there said that Marshawn Lynch might be held to fewer than 200 carries this year, which
if you're a listener of this show, you wouldn't own Marshawn Lynch right now anyway. But go ahead.
Well, I own him.
What?
Well, I got him in the 3rd round of that Blake Harrington dynasty. And it's just too good to pass up.
Yeah, but that's fine. That's another dynasty rookie draft. But I'm just saying you would not have been drafting him in a redraft.
Yeah.
Based on our comments.
Yeah. Okay. So Howard Bender takes Lynch right there. I was actually on Fantasy Alarm last week, and we were talking about players that he said, well, what player do you hate even though everybody else loves? And I said, it's difficult because you have to take value into it. And I said DeMarco Murray just because I don't view me taking him at his mid-second round price tag.
Drafting him kind of upside what you're
said as you're basically drafting him at his ceiling in there, so I wouldn't be taking it. And, of course, Howard's like, well, actually, you just drafted him in the 2nd round of some experts draft, and I felt like an idiot. And he's like, oh, but I don't love him, Eric. He tried to be nice to me. He's like, but I don't love him. I'm with you. It's okay, but I don't love him.
You're at a dinner party. It's like ripping on someone's college major or their college. You're like, oh, sociology majors are all idiots.
Yeah.
What'd you major in? Well, sociology.
Yeah, or saying what immigrant has a pony when you're at a dinner party and then you find out that
I had a pony.
Manya had a pony. A little bit of the Seinfeld fun tonight. Marshawn Lynch and then Tom Brady is the selection after that, followed by 4 straight receivers to end round 4. Alshon Jeffrey, Golden Tate, Larry Fitzgerald, and Julian Edelman as the number 3 receiver to Keith Douglas. So we have a lot of receivers off the board here after 4 rounds, Dave. We have 3 teams already with 3 wideouts. We have 3 teams with 2 tight ends. So there is a lot of stacking going on right now, position-wise, as we enter the 5th round of this draft.
This is actually a lot more interesting, the way that the people have handled the tight ends in this draft versus last night. Last night they did chase. Remember how there was that, I think it was the 4th round, Balky, maybe it was, where there was
4th round, yeah.
Speak about 6 tight ends that went in those 12 picks. Here, everybody's like, you know what? Screw you guys. You guys take your 2 tight ends each. We're going to grab all the other talent that you're just leaving lay around. And I think that's the way to do it, actually.
Yeah, that does make sense. And you would think with 3 teams doubling up on tight end, there would be there's almost like a price fixing aspect of the other 9 teams in this format, saying okay, look, I'm not. Or it's a better analogy is in the Dark Knight when the Joker set up the bombs on the 2 ferries. And it was like a game of chicken between the convicts and the citizens. They could blow up the other one, but at midnight they both blew up if nobody blew up the other's boat. This is what it's like. It's well, you know what? They didn't take a tight end yet, so I'm still here. I'm going to let those tight ends go, and that's what's happening tonight.
But they are going to need them. There will be a run.
Yeah.
I think the 6th round is where it's going to come up.
Well, we'll see. It definitely didn't happen in the 5th round. Let's get into the analysis there. Dalvin Cook to Keith Douglas here at the 5:01, followed by Terrell Pryor, Stephon Diggs, and Tyreek Hill as the 3rd receiver to Mike Beers from RotoViz.
That's a bit of a drop for Hill. All the way from the 404, I think, to the 504.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, are you talking about last night specifically, or normally?
Specifically last night. I think also he does normally go on the beginning of the 4th.
503 actually.
Is he?
Yeah,
okay.
503. Right. Now I'm talking about a DE ADP too, which maybe is not that big of a difference, but normally 503. So he's getting him right at his value. Tyler Eifert is the 7th tight end off the board tonight, and he goes at the 505. Martavis Bryant, Jamison Crowder, Devontae Adams, and Michael Crabtree. So a lot of interesting high upside receivers there. Dave, of those 4 in the 5th round between Bryant, Crowder, Adams, and Crabtree, which one do you like best for that value right there?
Actually, I like the player that went last. I like Crabtree the best. Remember, Crabtree went last night with a 312 pick, so he went pretty early. I don't dislike Crowder. I don't dislike Devontae Adams. I mean, obviously he's got Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. But Crabtree, just to me, is real steady Eddie. He's going to get his targets. His quarterback just got a new contract. I just feel really comfy, as you would say, Balky, with Crabtree.
Other points I want to make about those receivers. Number one, out of those 4, the 2 that I consistently see rising in high-stakes drafts are Martavis Bryant and Jamison Crowder, especially Crowder. Seems to be moving up every single day.
Bryant, to me, has more risk. Quite a bit more risk than the other 3, actually.
I would agree with that. Now, I will say this. I haven't seen, of those 4 receivers, I've only seen one of them go in the 1st round, and that's Devontae Adams. I saw go. Well, what did I tell you? Was that the 108 or the 110 in a Football Guys Players Championship draft?
That's, it's a little bit, it's a number of standard deviations outside of the norm.
Yes, maybe a dozen standard deviations. So that's an interesting 4 receivers right there. And then we move on. Tevin Coleman to Izzy Alcafas is his number 3 running back.
What was your opinion on Coleman last night? Because you asked me about mine. I wasn't a gargantuan fan, but you liked him.
Yeah.
You tend to like Coleman, I think, a little bit.
Well, I own him in Dynasty, and I've been waiting for that bond to pay off, but it still has not matured. Maybe this will be the year. The problem, I guess, I don't necessarily have with Coleman, and this isn't a huge thing, but I do worry about Kyle Shanahan leaving that offense and bringing in Steve Sarkisian. I don't know how those running backs are going to be used. If Hooper does, in fact, break out this year, then that's going to be taking away some targets from Freeman and Coleman. So I don't know. I guess I feel like the fact that Coleman seems to be rising up boards a little bit is making me like him a little less. When I can get guys like, some other, I won't mention them, but some other pass-catching running backs that you can get a little bit later that I don't think are necessarily that much worse than Coleman.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Isn't Freeman is up for, or did he sign a long-term contract? Supposedly
they're trying to get an kind done right now.
But he's going to supposedly do that. That's going to be a pretty lucrative deal. So they really like him, and he's really the lead guy. So I don't really. I guess I kind of question it myself. Why isn't Coleman going more in the 6th, 7th, or 8th? Is kind of where I would value him based on the fact that he's definitely the B player in the AB running back game for the Falcons.
Yeah. No, you make a lot of good points, and I'll just say this. Okay, so Tevin Coleman is the 5-10 pick tonight. Normally, in FFPC best ball, you are looking at him going at the 604. Okay. So now maybe this is a case.
A little higher, but not much.
Again, and I'm looking at ADP over the last 2 weeks. So maybe if Coleman is rising, which I do believe he is, maybe this makes a lot of sense there for Izzy. But
Izzy might have to call back in and be like, look, guys, let me explain this pick to you. You morons who don't understand it yet. I'll tell you what it's like.
And in Izzy's defense, he also did get Freeman. This is a best ball format.
That's true.
So he's locking up the Atlanta running game.
That's a good point. And why don't we notice this instantly? By the way, I love the McCaffrey pick because I just love McCaffrey.
I know you love McCaffrey. Emmanuel Sanders and Willie Snead finishing off the 5th round. I like that Willie Snead pick by Scott Fish. I'm a fan of Willie Snead this year. I think he's being undervalued, and I think
he signed a contract today, right?
I don't know if he has signed it yet. Has he?
What is he getting paid, like $800 grand? It's a ridiculously crappy amount.
Yeah, it was very.
Seriously,
very
the Saints are. This is the type of crappy organization the Saints are. No wonder Brandon Cooks was happy to leave. Seriously, this team sucks. The Saints suck. Their organization's terrible.
I mean, I'm not going to comment on that. But Willie Snead normally going at the 605, so a solid value, or where you have to get him basically, and I like that. Now, I don't know if I necessarily like it as my number one receiver because that's what Scott Fish drafted him as. But you only have to start 2, and he follows up Willie Snead with Dante Moncrief as the first pick in the 6th round. So there's a lot of significant upside here. Getting Snead and Moncrief as your 1-2 receivers, and you already have loaded up at running back and tight end in the first 4 rounds. So I think that strategy has paid off for Scott Fish.
Looks like our prediction for the 6th round is coming true.
Wasn't my prediction. It was your prediction, my friend. And we do see some more tight ends going off the board here, a significant amount as we venture forward here in the Pros versus Joes number 2, Say My Name draft. Hunter Henry, the 602 selection. That is Brian Holgen taking him as his number 1 tight end. Zach Ertz, the pick right after that to Izzy Alcafas as his number 1 tight end, followed by Brandon Marshall to Drew Maselli. Do you know if Drew is drafting this with Josh Maselli, his son? You know if they're doing this together?
I don't know. Josh, he's been going to a lot of weddings lately, so there's not a lot of weddings on this time of the week. So maybe he's available.
No Monday night weddings.
Generally not. Yeah. I mean, that's the cheapest time of the week.
Monday night?
Monday night weddings, the cheap one. I know what they say, Fridays are the cheap ones, but Monday, dude, super cheap.
Yeah. Yeah, Friday is the new clicky thing to do, to have your wedding on a Friday. Yeah. Because you could save money, and now it's becoming the thing. So now it's so many people are doing it that it's almost becoming the norm.
Really?
It's not being that big of a deal.
Is it like a socially conservative thing to do, or something that you're saving the grass, or something that you're not trampling it on Saturday or something?
No, it's just I think that it's
you're fiscally responsible, or
well, you can, if you have your wedding on a Friday, whoever is hosting the event can still do something on a Saturday. You know what I mean? So you can basically lock up 2 big events on one weekend if you're the person doing it. So to encourage people to do that, maybe you give them a pretty good discount to have it on Friday.
Right, no, it makes sense. Yeah. They don't do it on Sundays, though, because of church and all that.
I don't know anybody I'm sure there's people who have been married on Sundays. I've never been to a Sunday wedding.
Yeah.
Never been to a Monday wedding either.
Josh, tell us how it is.
Brandon Marshall is the 604 selection tonight, followed by Eric Ebron and Delaney Walker. So 2 more tight ends here in the 6th round. That brings the total to 4 halfway through the 6th round. Devontae Parker, Spencer Ware, and Mark Ingram are the selections after that. Jack Doyle, Jeremy Maclin, Martellus Bennett round out the 6th round. Dave, Jeremy Maclin again. He has an ADP in the 9th round of FFPC DEs. He went in the 4th round last night. He goes in the 6th round tonight to Evan Silva. Maclin.
Maybe your ADP is a little bit on the outdated tip.
It must be, because he is going up, up, up. What do you make about okay, so here's the question. With Maclin fast rising up boards, does Mike Wallace or Brashad Perriman become a value?
I don't know. I mean, Macklin's the competent receiver that the guys in the know think he's going to be the one that's going to produce. I don't know how anyone could assert that Perriman's going to be that guy. It's not going to be him. And Wallace is still more that kind of the speed guy, the deep threat. And it makes sense that Macklin's the guy where the middle is going to catch passes. And, tight end, you're looking at Ben Watson. So really, it makes some sense, actually.
And I don't think anybody's thinking Brashad Perriman's going to be the guy, but you can get him in the 14th round in this format. I mean, especially in best ball, that makes a lot of sense for a guy like him. So I don't know, maybe he becomes more of a value. I don't know if I could pull the trigger this early on Jeremy Maclin. But, hey, Evan Silva did it, and I think if you put a Twitter poll out there right now, he is what more well-versed in fantasy football than yours truly. Martellus Bennett finishes off the 6th round. So you are looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tight ends go off the board in the 6th round. So Dave was right, and you do see that tight end run hitting the 6th round tonight, 2 rounds later than it was last night. And now you have a total, of 13 tight ends off the board through 6 rounds, and only two teams do not have at least one tight end. So we'll be paying attention to that as we go forward. Devontae Parker was the selection in this past round, Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm. We heard a lot of off-season buzz about Devontae Parker and how he is going to have a breakthrough year, a breakout year in that Miami Dolphins offense. He has been asking more questions at meetings. He's been more punctual, doing all the little things that he was not doing before.
How nice! That's lovely.
It's a feel-good story.
How does that impact your projections for him? With that, when he shows up nicely on meetings and he talks and asks questions. When do I run the post? When do I run the curl here, sir?
Yes. You make fun of that. Okay?
You damn right I make fun of it, and I should.
But there is something to be said for...
The point is, how do you project that? It's all just a bunch of guesswork, cockamamie witchcraft.
I think that the 6 pros in this draft would disagree with you. That it is not cockamamie witchcraft.
You tell me what the squirrel's nuts or whatever you have to put into your little your bowl that you're mixing up your spell and you're
mortar and pistol.
Yeah, you're gonna conjure
pistol
up your Devontae Parker projections based on him showing up at meetings and asking questions. Let me know how that works out for you.
Yeah, that's what they used on Game of Thrones to bring the mountain back to life.
Oh,
was cockamamie witchcraft. I think that's how it works. Yeah. Okay, so the thing I will say about Parker is I really thought his ADP would be going higher up, but it sounds like a lot of people are reading between the lines here and not seeing a big breakout that a lot of people are projecting.
Well, he has an opportunity to really do well. But he still has to deal with Jarvis Landry. He still has to deal with Tannehill not being all that great of a quarterback, right? Ajayi's not a terrible pass-catching back. So even if he breaks out, what is he breaking out to? I think he's probably not breaking out to a WR1 type player, do you think?
No,
I don't think that.
Absolutely not.
So his upside's kind of a bit capped, and his downside is about as low as it can be. Because he could still just be terrible. He's had injury issues in the past. So I think you see a limited upside, a colossal downside. You have to use witchcraft to try and project his, to his numbers, and that's why. You should be getting him at a discount. I don't think 6th round is okay, but I could see him going a little bit later. I get it.
He was the 33rd receiver drafted tonight, and I think he does finish somewhere in the 20 to 25 range for receivers.
You do?
So, yeah.
How much you want to bet?
I think we are. I'm pretty sure we already have 5 on that. Yeah. This was something that we had talked about earlier.
It wasn't that narrow of a range. It was something else, right? I'm sure it was.
No, I think he has to finish as a top 25 receiver this year. I think that's literally what it was.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. Which I think he does. And if he does, that makes a lot of sense for Howard Bender there. There's a total chance, and I think it happens. Moving on, the 701 tonight.
I love finding no chance. All right.
Moving on, the 701 tonight by FFPC Joe. Keith Douglas, he takes Doug Martin. Now, this is a guy that has been is suspended for the first 4 games of the season. I said the first 4 years of the game. The first nobody would take a chance on a guy like that. The first 4 games of the year, he normally goes at the 7-12, and Keith Douglas gets him at the 701 tonight, so it makes a lot of sense.
He was a big value last night, Doug Martin was.
He was.
The number 10 team that was being a little bit maligned.
Richard Green, yeah.
In the 10th round, Green got a nice value there.
Yeah, and now we're seeing Martin go up a little bit more tonight. Deshaun Jackson is the 4th receiver drafted by Evan Silva out of the 2-hole. And then a few more quarterbacks go this round, led by Andrew Luck to Chuck Root, and then Drew Brees right after that to Mike Beers. Amir Abdullah is the 3rd running back selected by Dan Thomas, who we had on the show before. Kelvin Benjamin is the 4th receiver drafted by Howard Bender. You have Russell Wilson going right after that, and then a trio of running backs, Mike Gillislee, Carlos Hyde, Adrian Peterson. Let's talk about, we talked about Gillislee a little bit last night. We're going to be talking about him on Friday as well. Carlos Hyde. Speaking of Roto World blurbs, did you happen to see that one?
Yes, I did. Especially since I made the terribly bad Joe Williams trade, so I'm really rooting for Joe Williams to do well.
Right. So the blurb on Roto World was that Carlos Hyde could be a potential cut.
A I always love
surprise cut.
Yeah, it's a great adjective. The surprise cut.
Now, far be it from me to put out a conspiracy theory on this show.
Which, by the way, let me just interrupt you. You dealt Carlos Hyde in one of your beautiful trades, Balky.
Yeah, and then shortly thereafter, I drafted him in a startup dynasty.
But then you did pick up crap. It was like Latavius Murray and some other junk, right?
Well, here's the thing.
But that was because Murray was on the Raiders.
Yeah, and there was Sammy Coates is involved, but basically it boiled down to Latavius Murray for Carlos Hyde.
Doesn't it suck when you trade your guy away for junk, or what you think is okay, and you lose because the guy you get back is terrible, but then the guy you trade away is terrible. Like, effectively, you guys just both got rid of really bad players.
Now, here's the thing. I went around and I flipped Latavius Murray for the 301 pick in Carrington, and I took Marshawn Lynch with that pick.
That's funny.
So, effectively, I traded. You got rid of Carlos Hyde, and I got Marshawn Lynch.
That's not bad, actually.
Possibly.
We'll see.
To get back to my conspiracy theory,
yes.
We see this blurb about Hyde being a potentially a surprise cut. We see the blurb. What was the other Roto World blurb we mentioned earlier in the show? We were talking about, did you happen to see? Marshawn Lynch.
I have an Evan Silva question. Go ahead.
Okay. We have two guys from Roto World in this draft tonight. How likely is it that these guys decided to strategically make sure that these blurbs were posted on Roto World shortly before the Pros versus Joes draft goes off, when they know that everybody else will be checking Roto World to see the latest news, so they're not making any bad picks? And then you see Carlos Hyde and Marshawn. Now, who did they go to? This is the question. Carlos Hyde goes to Drew Maselli.
Except that Rich could have gotten him right before he went to the Masellis.
And then
by the way, the Masellis who live where?
In California.
In
Bay Area.
Bay Area.
Yeah.
Well, I don't actually. Josh lives in Arizona now, but the dad's still in Palo Alto or San Francisco or whatever the hell he's doing.
Yeah. So Hyde, do you buy this surprise cut? I mean, is there anything there?
Yeah, I think they don't like him.
Right.
I said this all along. They don't like him.
Okay.
We did talk about the fact that, that Hyde is still probably the best running back on the team. And if the team had any brains whatsoever, they'd probably just wear all these guys around, realize that Hyde's not probably the best fit for their system, but he's still better than the other guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that he is.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not. I mean, maybe he just totally is not that great. I wouldn't draft Hyde unless he's really getting cheap, but he's not quite cheap enough for me yet.
Jimmy Wagner, who drafted in this event last year, FFPC Joe, who's been on the High Stakes Lowdown on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, won tens of thousands of dollars playing in the FFPC already. Very smart guy. Just posted in the chat, Carlos Hyde is doo-doo. That is the hard-hitting analysis that you get from high-stakes players.
Doo-doo for what? A breakout year?
No, I think he is doo-doo for more doo-doo if you draft him this year. So he is not a fan of Carlos Hyde.
You know what I wanted to ask Evan Silva?
What?
If he hates the use of dumb podcast hosts say the blurb. We can ask him that. You said blurb 30 times during your little blurbathon here.
I was trying to set up my blurb joke. It was a joke blurb. You can actually ask him that, Dave, this Friday night, because Evan Silva will be our guest on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour this Friday.
All right,
yeah.
So, you know what, Evan? I'm going to ask you about the blurb.
We'll talk about the blurb aspect.
It's news, you freaking a-holes.
I think that will, I mean, honestly, especially after this show, that is going to be at the forefront of everybody's mind, is what his take is on blurb. So that will be a good use of Evan's time. I appreciate that.
I'm sure it will.
Adrian Peterson, Pierre Garcon, and then Danny Woodhead finishing off the 7th round here. Danny Woodhead to Scott Fish as his number 3 running back. Pierre Garcon is the 3rd receiver taken by Brian Holgen tonight. As a reminder, for anybody who is interested in playing in a format like this, go to myffpc.com. We have plenty of best ball formats that you can draft your own team just like this, as well as Dynasty, Football Guys Players Championship, $2 million prize pool, FFPC main event, a $1.8 million prize pool. And if you sign up and pay for your team in that format tonight, you will get your main event draft slot after next weekend, a full month ahead of time, so you can plan and connive your way to knowing what you want to do for your strategy in the FFPC main event this year. If you missed it last night, we had the FFPC Fat Stacks Division number 1 draft. Those boards are posted at FFPC on Twitter, at HSFF Hour on Twitter, of course, the FFPC and High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour Facebook pages as well. You can check those out there. And we'll be posting all the boards from all 6 of these drafts. We'll have another one tomorrow we'll preview at the end of the show. Let's get into the 8th round here. Eric Decker is the 3rd receiver selected by Scott Fish at the 8:01. And then we get a massive running back run. Bilal Powell to Brian Holgen. Derrick Henry to Izzy Alkafis. Theo Riddick to Drew Maselli. Eddie Lacy to Rich Rebar. And Duke Johnson completes that run to Eric Young there. Dave, did you – well, I won't talk about Duke Johnson right now because we do have a significant discussion on tap for him on Friday, but he's going to be an interesting player to discuss. Adam Thielen and Cameron Meredith, 2 guys that basically went around ahead of their ADP tonight. These 2 guys are climbing draft boards. Cameron Meredith, Dave, is a guy that was going in the 14th round, then he moved up to the 13th, shot up to the 11th. Now we saw him in the 9th and 10th, and now here he goes in the 8th. Sky's the limit, apparently, for Cameron Meredith. Everybody's starting to believe in him and realizing they were underdrafting him before.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a new dynasty startup this year, and I actually drafted Meredith as one of the receivers I drafted. And I did a bit of research on him, looking at, well, I mean, what do you think? Is Kevin White actually going to come back and break out, or is he going to be the bust that he looks like he has been so far? Kevin White was an overaged rookie coming out, injury issues, has done literally nothing in the NFL. Versus Meredith is like the exact opposite, an unheralded player, comes in and actually just produces and gets production.
Stays healthy, stays on the field.
The team actually, I think the front office was kind of giving Meredith a little bit of crap, like saying, you really have to step up your game, this and that, because they're just wanting him to actually come out and be that number 1 wide receiver that they need. So I really do like Cameron Meredith quite a bit.
Cameron Meredith is a guy that was selected by Dan Thomas here tonight, and if you look at what Dan Thomas has done over his, well, I suppose you can't because they're private drafts, but he's drafted a lot of FFPC draft experts, football guys leagues, and he knows where these players are going. He knows how to build a squad. When you can wait until the 8th round and get a guy like Cameron Meredith as your number 3 receiver, I think you might be doing a few things right. So that was a really good job by him. He already had 3 running backs. He already had a tight end and a quarterback to get Meredith there. Well done, good sir. Kobe Fleener right after that, Paul Perkins, and then John Brown, a guy we talked about a lot last night, and then Randall Cobb. Now, this is a player we should talk about here, going at the 8-12. It's very difficult for me to come to terms with a guy who had such a massive breakout season a couple years ago on an elite offense. A guy, Randall Cobb, who I think was an early 2nd-round pick or late 1st. I can't remember what he was, but he was right in that area.
Yeah, something 2nd round.
And he's going in the 8th round, man. And I know he really stunk it up last year. But it's so weird for me to see Cobb there. Now, are you on board with Randall Cobb in the 8th round in a format like this, and where obviously tight ends get a little bit more pushed up? Do you like him as far as his value right here in high stakes drafts this year?
I really, I personally do not. I don't think Randall Cobb. I don't think he's all that talented of a player. I think he oversigned a contract. And if you look at his. You look at his production. He's had one really good year. It was 2014, 91 catches, 1,287 yards. We have 12 touchdowns. Since then, I mean, he's not that good. I mean, really, man. I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to you, and you're putting up what, do you have 830 yards in 2015 and 610 yards last year. That's terrible. I mean, that's awful. I don't like Randall Cobb. He cost me the Kentucky Fantasy Football Championship, by the way.
Yep.
Which
overall title.
Which your good friend and my most hated arch nemesis and rival, Ron Meyer, continues to bring up and stab me in the back.
Making T-shirts for it this year.
Exactly. This guy, this guy's the biggest jerk out there.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I know you've never really been a huge fan of drafting Packers tight ends. More FFPC points this year, Martellus Bennett or Randall Cobb?
I'll still take Cobb.
Really? Over Bennett? You hate the Packers tight ends.
They don't throw to them more than 90 times a year.
They've never had a good one. Yeah, I mean, and the last time they had
Chimura, Bubba Frank.
Well, no, but
Paul Kaufman.
and you were drafting those guys back then. Paul Kaufman would have been a great fantasy pick, by the way, in the 80s.
Ed West.
Well, he wasn't so great. But you're Michael Finley. They threw to him a bunch.
They threw to him some.
Would you say that Martellus Bennett is the best Packers tight end since Jermichael Finley?
Sure, I would say that.
Okay. This is interesting. I want to make another wager with you, but we literally already have 2 Martellus I got 5 on it this year, and I don't want to turn this I got 5 on it board to the I got 5 on Martellus board.
All right.
So let's move on. The 901, LeGarrette Blount to Keith Douglas. Evan Silva gets Tyrell Williams as his 6th straight receiver. So Evan Silva starts off as drafted running back, 2 tight ends, and now he's drafted nothing but receivers thus far. Corey Davis and then Kenny Britt right after that, followed by a couple of tight ends, C.J. Fedorowicz to Dan Thomas. Austin Hooper climbing up the board to the 9th round tonight.
Your boy, Austin Hooper.
Austin Hooper to Howard Bender. I like that pick. Samaje Perine and Frank Gore right after that, followed by Matt Ryan, who is the tight end, 6th quarterback off the board. And then Jordan Matthews, a guy I really like this year as well for his value. Now I'm a little surprised that Izzy took him as early as he did. I'm just checking his ADP right now. I could be wrong on this, but I thought Jordan Matthews was going later than that with the addition of Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, what have you. Jordan Matthews normally going at the 11:06. And Izzy gets him tonight in the 9th round. So not an egregious overreaching pick, but certainly going out and getting his guys, which I really appreciate. Jason Witten and Mike Wallace finish off the 9th round. We have not talked a whole lot of C.J. Fedorowicz. We briefly touched on him last night. I am definitely lower than everybody else on Fedorowicz. I don't see anything more than just a guy. Really?
Yeah.
In that offense, like with DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller, Lamar Miller.
He's just a long threat. He's not.
Tom Savage throwing him the ball.
Not moving that's the point. Well, that's why you have Fedorowicz. Tom Savage can't possibly hit Will Fuller on a bomb. He's going to underthrow him, overthrow him. He's going to throw it out of bounds. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to have to throw it to Fedorowicz over the middle all the time.
Yeah.
He and Hopkins, that's all he's going to throw it to.
Fedorowicz and Hopkins. So you don't like Fuller. You don't like who's the other guy from Ohio State? Miller. Braxton Miller is nothing this year.
No.
Okay. When does Watson take over on that team?
Yeah, there's another. Watson's gonna be throwing his 49-mile-an-hour fastball to Fedorowicz right over the middle.
Speaking of another guy who can't throw Will Fuller a bomb, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, Fuller will be out in the parking lot by the time Watson's ball gets there.
Yeah, and it still won't be in his vicinity. There was one other guy I wanted to talk about in this round.
Can I mention one thing quick?
Yeah, go ahead, because I can't remember who it was.
Isn't it odd that Team 3 draft? I mean, I just find
Team 3 is Chuck Root, FFPC
yeah,
Joe.
I mean, that Jack Doyle, some journeyman, piece of junk tight end, gets drafted ahead of his quarterback, Andrew Luck.
That is
the
funny.
supposed perennial Pro Bowler that may eventually go to the Hall of Fame.
But he got the hookup.
He did get the hookup. He made the correct pick. He astutely took Doyle and then waited on Luck.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the 10th round then here. Cameron Brate goes off the board at the 10:01 to Scott Fish as his number 3 tight end. Cameron Brate, by the way, is a guy I really like as a 3rd tight end in this format.
Yeah, because he'll have some big weeks.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry. You start him whenever. I mean, you don't have to worry about it.
There's a reasonable shot that Howard Howard supposedly has looked really good in mini camps off season so far. He could just be bad. He's a rookie tight end, and Brate's been solid.
And we've already seen it from Brate. I mean, if he does it, nobody's going to be shocked at that.
Right.
C.J. Prosise is the next selection to Brian Holgen, and then we have a mini quarterback run here. Cam Newton to Izzy Alcafas. Dak Prescott, Drew Maselli takes. This is an interesting draft that Drew has. He takes tight end to start it off, and then he goes quarterback in round 9 or 10. Do you think Drew's trying to force some action here at the quarterback and tight end positions?
I think he is, yeah. I mean, it makes some sense, actually, at quarterback, because people have been ignoring quarterback a little bit more than they should in the DE format at this point.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised, too, that when we have 1, 2, 3, 4 teams without quarterbacks so far, without any quarterbacks.
Well, and you see, Drew's he's just a veteran, smart drafter. He takes Ryan, comes back around, sees Cam go. Then by taking Prescott, he really pushes the action on teams 1, 2, and team 6 that don't have quarterbacks
right,
yet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they didn't end up taking any, but it's going to happen. I mean, they're going to have to start drafting them because you're going to need 3 eventually, and I think, he's definitely got 2 already.
You could also make the case that Rich Rebar is maybe ready to go in a different direction there and not take a quarterback, but once he saw back-to-back quarterbacks go, then he feels, okay, I got to take Roethlisberger at this point as my number 1, so
Absolutely.
he gets him there. Julius Thomas, part of that Miami Dolphins puffed-up juggernaut that we keep hearing about in the media. The starting tight end for Miami goes to Eric Young as the second tight end for that FFPC. Marvin Jones is another guy that you just salivate over to rip on, it seems like, all the time.
I do. I salivate over the rip on. What does that even mean?
Like you're licking your chops and you see the Marvin Jones sticker coming on the board. And can't wait till Balky gets to him so we can talk about how bad he's going to be.
Well, he's never done anything.
He had a good game.
He had one good year with 10 touchdowns, but he didn't have that many catches or yards. And then last year he had one 200-yard game. He's a one and done.
Which, by the way, that 200-yard game, you know who that was against?
The Packers, right?
The massively, insanely good Green Bay Packers secondary.
I think he had a 90-yard catch, too. It's such BS. He's terrible.
Kareem Hunt right after him, Matt Forte, and then Latavius Murray falls 4 rounds from where he went last night. Did you see, by the way, Darren Armani, who does a great job putting this whole thing together every single year? Follow him.
We should really give Armani more props.
Yeah, follow him on Twitter at Fantasy Mojo. Go to fantasymojo.com. A lot of great FFPC ADP there and some other great fantasy tools, too, so check that out. But Darren actually tweeted out today that I can't remember the exact thing, but shaking my head, or I got a headache from Latavius Lat Murray going at the 6:03, and it was a picture of the Hindenburg explosion.
I saw that.
That was very good. Matt, and follow him for great tweets, apparently, too. Matt Forte, Latavius Murray going, and then to finish off rounds 10, the top 2 picks of the 2015 NFL draft, correct?
Yeah.
No, 2014 NFL draft. Winston and Mariota. This is
wasn't 14.
This is their third year, so it's 2015.
Yeah,
2015 NFL draft. So they go Mariota and Jameis Winston, and that brings us through 10 rounds here.
Little mini quarterback thing going on.
So you were right. I mean, after Drew Maselli takes Prescott, he gets 3 teams who previously did not have quarterbacks to make sure they hop on and get a quarterback. Now, Howard Bender still avoided it, and he and Scott Fish are the only teams without a quarterback at this point, and we're seeing some double-ups here as we enter round 11. One other thing, I meant to point this out when we were talking about the Randall Cobb, Martellus Bennett discussion, but they are both on the same fantasy team here in this draft. Keith Douglas took Randall Cobb after getting Martellus Bennett, so maybe it's not necessarily, I really believe in Bennett, I believe in Cobb, I just want a couple of slices of what could be the best offense in pro football.
Sure.
Their number 1 tight end, their number 3 receiver, essentially, who, by the way, was their number 1 receiver 2 years ago. So it's not like he doesn't have it in and would be successful. And he doesn't have to worry about starting any of these guys.
By
so
chance, he was number 1 receiver.
And whatever. And then he gets Jared Cook to lead off the 11th round. We're at Kirk Cousins here at the 11:02 to Evan Silva. So Evan Silva actually takes 2 quarterbacks, Mariota and Cousins.
I think Silva did well there. I mean, I think Mariota and Cousins, those are 2 really good quarterbacks for waiting until the 10th, 11th. I think he did really well at quarterback position, locking those 2 up.
What's the percentage chance that both those quarterbacks finish as top 10 quarterbacks this year?
I think both of them, probably not that great because, truthfully, that's kind of tough for them both to get there. Probably 20%.
I think it's higher.
But you have to consider both. I mean, for one of them.
I am.
It's not that good.
No,
for them both to get there. I mean, that's tough. If one of them has a bad year, Balky, one of them finishes.
Here's the thing, Dave.
12.
I don't think either one of them has a bad year. I think they both have very successful years, actually. Are you counting how many quarterbacks they
take? Yes, they went. What was it 11th and 13th or something like that to that.
11 and 13, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they both have a shot to be top 10 quarterbacks, but for them to both be top 10 quarterbacks is actually asking a lot.
Okay.
For one of them could be 8th, and another one could be 13th. One could be 8th, another one could be 20th. One could get hurt, whatever. So it's pretty tough.
Can I make a bold prediction here?
Even to say Tom Brady and Russell Wilson will both be top 10 quarterbacks, the odds of that happening are probably only 60%.
Wow. I think it's higher. But actually...
Do you know how the statistics and all the math
Yes,
works?
I'm very familiar with how math works.
I like being a little condescending.
I'll make a bold prediction. Marcus Mariota finishes as the number 2 overall quarterback this year. Behind, you guessed it, Kirk Cousins as number 1.
That'd be something.
This is why Evan Silva he's so talented because he just got the number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks overall this year in the 10th and 11th round. Josh Doxson is going to be catching balls from Kirk Cousins, and he actually goes to Naked Time. That's Chuck Root, his team at Team 3. It takes Josh Doxson. What do you make? We talked about the Washington offense a lot. Do you like Josh Doxson as an 11th round pick, knowing that he's going to be behind Terrell Pryor, Jameson Crowder, and Jordan Reed in the pecking order?
No. No. Knowing that even if Cousins would be the number 1 or number 2 guy, like you said, No, I don't like that at all. I don't like that this guy who got drafted early and had a total bust of a rookie season, he's now 4th in the pecking order. What good is that? I mean, it sucks.
I'm just trying to think if he'd still be 4th because he's ahead of those running backs. He's ahead of Thompson and P. Ryan and Kelly, right?
As a receiver?
Yeah, pass catcher.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean,
the point is it doesn't even matter. I mean, because once you have Crowder, Pryor, and Reed, who cares? I mean, Josh Doctson is nothing but an afterthought, really.
Jonathan Stewart was a guy that I was not on at all, and now I think I am starting to like because he is depressed in drafts. I'm betting since you are a McCaffrey guy, you're not so sold on Jonathan Stewart at the 11:04 as he goes to Mike Beers tonight.
I'm not, but I mean, if I had McCaffrey, I would have looked at him. Although I can't fault Izzy for not taking Jonathan Stewart because last night Stewart went like the 14th, I think.
Yeah, he went super late. Quincy Enunwa right after that. Jeremy Hill, Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Dixon, and James White are the 4 running backs selected in the middle of the 11th round. That's Hill, Kamara, Dixon, and White. And then 3 quarterbacks to finish off the round. Derek Carr, Phillip Rivers, and Tyrod Taylor. Been seeing a lot of Tyrod Taylor love, Dave, lately on Twitter and a lot of articles I've been reading. A lot of people think that he is in for a massive year. Actually, I shouldn't even say this because it's giving away the content of the article, but Draft Sharks had a great article about quarterback tandems to draft this year with how their schedules work out and guys that pair well with each other,
right.
Which you actually used to do your own. For many years, and then you got to be a big-time podcast co-host.
No, what happened is I realized other people do that.
And put more effort into it?
Yeah, I could just
lay back and read
use their work. Yeah. Why not?
Well, Draft Sharks you can use their work.
I do. I'm a subscriber, and I do.
Yeah, sign up for an insider account there at DraftSharks.com. But Tyrod Taylor was on there quite a bit with a lot of other quarterbacks that you can pair him with.
A lot of people. I think the only reason Tyrod Taylor doesn't get drafted earlier is because the Bills seem to somehow hate him. They use every reason possible to say they're not going to sign him to a long-term deal. They want to cut him. They want to get rid of him. They want to treat him badly. The Bills are another organization run about as poorly as the Saints. They don't know how to treat players like human beings. They treat them like pieces of meat. If Tyrod had gotten respected, I think that he'd be getting drafted a little bit earlier. But I do like Tyrod Taylor. I think he's actually I really was going to rip on Scott Fish for taking Cameron Brate and then missing like a half dozen, 8 quarterbacks.
Right.
But he actually did all right getting Tyrod Taylor and Matthew Stafford, who actually was supposed to be the backup to Jake Rudock. Rudock is now still out there. So,
right, yeah.
So maybe Rudock later.
Yeah, I was just going to say, make sure that you're locking up that Lions quarterback value. Get Rudock later.
If I was Fish, I would for sure draft Rudock in the 28th.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to get everybody a laugh. Alvin Kamara, your thoughts on him this year? He goes in the middle of this round. That was to Eric Young, FFPC Joe. Seeing a lot of great stuff about Adrian Peterson being, doing all the right things in New Orleans. Of course, Mark Ingram was the de facto number 1 running back they had the last couple of years. Alvin Kamara, they trade up. He's a pass catcher. What do you make of him in the 11th round?
The Saints running game, it's just typical mess because the way that they run running backs. So I'm not a huge fan necessarily, but I do think that Peterson, I guess I would look at Kamara as a opportunity because I think Peterson is kind of done. So if you think Peterson is done, Ingram is a pretty solid, first and second down back, and Kamara could be your third down back, and you might get some production out of him. But I wouldn't be holding my breath for him to do fantastically well.
We're going to get to 12th round analysis shortly here, but before we do that, let's take another phone call. The 408 is live on the air on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour with Balky and Dave. Who is this?
Hey boys, this is Drew. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you? Are you living the dream out on the coast?
Well, he might be in Arizona.
That's right.
I'm not sure. Are you?
No.
Go ahead,
California. California.
You're in Cali. And I suppose you don't summer in Arizona. Once in a while, you go to Arizona just for vacations here and there, right?
I'm there a lot. Josh is here now, so I'm there a lot. In fact, I just want to clear a couple things up. No, he's not here tonight because he would have never let me take 2 tight ends to start this draft ever in a million years. So he's not here. He actually had to work, so it's not a wedding tonight, it's work tonight. So that's what it is. I had to call in because I didn't realize I was so brilliant taking 2 quarterbacks back to back. But geez, I didn't know I was that good. But geez, I appreciate it, guys. That was nice.
It's a strategy we've rarely seen before, where a drafter takes 2 consecutive quarterbacks.
Yeah, he's smart and he's humble. Drew Maselli, ladies and gentlemen. Drew, let's talk a little bit about the leading off the draft with 2 tight ends. When you were getting ready to do this draft, did you have any idea that you would be trying to force the issue on tight ends, taking a guy like Gronk and Jordan Reed in the second round?
Yeah, actually, I actually wanted to get those two. In a best ball like this, they're injury prone, but they're going to have, when they play, they're going to have great days. I'll get another tight end here in a little while to fill in, but I just thought that would be good. Plus, it just sort of pressed the issue. Now, the guys who are the experts, the pros, they don't buy into this stuff, but eventually they're going to have to do it, and they did. Eventually had to, which opened up spots down the road. So I wasn't mad about that. It worked out well.
Yeah, one of those spots that opened up for you as far as getting some value. Now you take Carlos Hyde in the 7th round. Now we talked about this earlier. You are, right in the Niners' wheelhouse. I believe you hold season tickets to the Niners. Do you not?
I do, and if any of the people listening ever want to go to a game, I'm giving them away. But yes, I do.
So Carlos Hyde.
Again, you let him get to camp. Everything he's done so far, you hear 3 guys say that he's doing great, and then you hear somebody else mumble it off. He doesn't like him. Well, let him play. He still was. If it wasn't for that, he was still the best value. But I don't know who leaked whatever that was, but nobody out here is talking about that. But we'll see.
Interesting.
See, that is true.
We'll see. Yeah.
Blurb.
Yeah,
they're blurbing it out.
So you're on board with Hyde, and then James White. Let's talk briefly about him, Drew. You get him in the 11th round. Has he locked up that passing down role for New England? I mean, is he the type of guy that one of those rare Patriots running backs that you actually can count on for decent production? Again, and this is a best ball format, so you don't have to worry about when to start him. But can you count on him for some pretty prolific weeks this year?
I think so. I mean, but I sure wouldn't. In a regular redraft, I really have a hard time with him because you can never tell what Belichick's going to do. But in a best ball, he'll probably have 4 or 5 or 6 really good games, which would be great. So I thought it was a good value right there.
Last thing that we'll bring up with you, Drew.
The last thing we're going to bring up. I mean, are you ready for the great meals and gambling?
That's what I was going to ask.
Il Molino, Joe's, the 4-card poker. Dude, it's going to be a great week in Vegas.
At Planet Hollywood. Sign up right now, myffpc.com.
Stop advertising.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely ready. Got the book to go out there, and we got dinner. And I don't want to end up at Caesar's Palace underneath that stupid statue at 4 a.m. again, taking pictures. I don't want to hear it.
Look, we have to take a picture, a selfie of the statue of David with the penis behind us. It's the penis picture at Caesar's. What are you talking about? We do that every year, and it's going to happen again. Don't worry about it.
It probably will.
It'll be on Facebook.
Hey, listen, right, Drew, looking forward to seeing you again out in Vegas.
All
Thanks so much for calling in. Good luck the rest of the way tonight.
Good show, guys. Have fun. Bye.
Drew Maselli, he is drafting from the 9 spot tonight. Very successul FFPC Joe player in some of the high stakes leagues out there. He and Josh have won the $2,500 auction before. They've done very, very well in Big Payback and High Society as well. So he's bringing the pain tonight with the quarterbacks and tight ends. Just got an interesting tweet, Dave. Brian Holgen, Draft Addict, drafting out of the 11 hole.
Oh, yes.
Holy cow, I just legitimately listened to the wrong HSFF hour for an hour. KFFSC was killing it, though. So he thought he was...
It just shows how dumb this show is.
Like, nobody...
Just ignore it.
Like, we just...
Right? It's like, how come no one's talking about my team?
Yeah, I was surprised. Like, am I doing well? Am I doing really bad? Why are they not talking about... And then, of course, you have Farrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, bringing in the noise on that. So I think that's very funny. Let's get back to the action here. We left off with Tyrod Taylor. Let's get back into the 12th round here. Matthew Stafford, who you mentioned, Scott Fish taking the handcuff to Jake Rudock there at the 12:01. Rashard Matthews right after that. And Eli Manning, the 3rd consecutive quarterback drafted by Izzy El-Kaffa. So he waits until round 10 to draft a quarterback, but then he gets Cam Newton, Derek Carr, and Eli Manning. Not a bad way to do it.
That pick, the Eli Manning pick, is I would call this the bat blank crazy pick, where that has caused everyone to go crazy about quarterbacks. Because once they saw him take Eli, everybody's like, all right, now no one's messing around on quarterback anymore because watch what happened right after the Eli pick.
Yeah, there's a lot of quarterbacks that went off the board in this round. Corey Coleman followed the Eli Manning pick, and then Andy Dalton right after that as the number 2 quarterback drafted by Rich Rebar. Tavon Austin right after that to Eric Young, and then Carson Wentz, Blake Bortles, Ted Ginn, Joe Flacco, Sterling Shepard, and then Carson Palmer. So now, Dave, as we look at all of these teams through 12 rounds of this draft, we are looking at, well, I should say through 13 rounds, just to be fair to everybody. There's only one team that has 1 quarterback. Everybody else has at least 2.
Yep.
How do you, I don't know what your personal preferences on this. I know that you ideally in this format would like to get 3 starting quarterbacks. Do you ever draft a backup quarterback late if you only have 2 quarterbacks, or if you have a guy like Brady or Rodgers, are you drafting a backup in a 28-round best ball?
I would honestly, in a 28-round best ball, I would never not have 3 quarterbacks. And when I say that, I would also say that the 3rd quarterback I would have would never be a player that's like a transient guy where you just don't know if he's even going to keep the job. Like, it's not going to be a savage type player. So I do tend to overdraft, where I would look at like what Evan Silva did. And taking Tannehill, I mean, you kind of look at it, you're like, oh man, you probably need to do that. But he kind of did. He's at the 2 hole there in the 13th round. He's got Mariota, he's got Cousins, and that's pretty solid. But if he doesn't take Tannehill there,
number 1 and 2 quarterbacks this year.
Absolutely. But if he doesn't take Tannehill there, what could be the guys that are left coming back? You just don't know because you have so many picks that are going to go off the board. You could be looking at absolute garbage. So I think the Tannehill pick there totally makes sense. So that's how I would kind of run my 3rd quarterback. I always want to make sure I have a 3rd one that's legit.
When you're drafting in this format, do you prefer, based on that analysis, do you actually prefer being in the middle so you can't be caught in, with your pants down in these runs like this, or doesn't it matter to you? Because like if you're on the end, you sort of have to cover your ass a little bit.
I mean, I would probably prefer a little bit more to be in the middle, but I mean, anything from like 3 to 9 or 10 is fine. I mean, I think when you get to the 1, 2, 11, and 12, it gets tougher. But it's just tougher. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just you just have to really think, especially when you get to the kickers and defenses too. That's another area where you really have to. If someone starts taking kickers, you need to be paying attention if you're on the ends, because if you're trying to get 3, you really have to make sure you're lining it up correctly.
I want to talk about Carson Palmer here just for a second, because I don't think you were on. No, you weren't on the show this past Friday, but we were talking about, or maybe we were even talking about this last night, about how the Cardinals say that Palmer threw too much last year. He was overused, and he had like a dead arm. And
I thought they said that was in the off season he threw too much, or was that actually during the season?
Oh, I thought it was that. That's why he slowed down during last season, was because he had such a tired arm. It doesn't matter. The point I want to make is I read a blurb on, I believe it was Roto World today, or it might have been Football Guys, I can't remember, about how he's going to throw more in the preseason this year, because Bruce Arians said that he didn't loosen up his arm enough. Bruce Arians, like, I don't understand. Like, somebody's not telling, because you can't have it both ways. Somebody's not telling the truth here, what's going on with Palmer. Either they're covering something up, or nobody knows what's going on, or they're just saying something for the sake of saying something.
You know, I think as athletes age, they talk about rest being superior.
Right.
I think that one of my favorite writers, Jason Gay in the Wall Street Journal, he's
right.
a fantastic writer. He wrote about Federer, the tennis player.
Sure.
And I think he just got his 7th Grand Slam. I don't even remember what it was for. It was like one of the Opens, some crap, whatever.
Oh, Wimbledon just happened.
Sure, that must have been. I don't care. Right. But he won that because he actually, all he does is he pretty much just takes off until the next major. And I think he skipped the French Open this year because maybe he's not so good on clay. But he just goes to the majors, and he pretty much just takes that time off, and he goes back and rests his body, and then goes to the next thing.
Yeah.
It's like that's what you should be doing when you're super old like this. You need to be resting more often. Trust me, I'm old. I know what it's like. You need to rest more frequently.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
or drink more often. Both 2 things.
You heard it from the geezer himself, Dave Gerzak. Rest more. Cole Beasley is the pick right after Carson Palmer to lead off things in the 13th round. Ryan Tannehill, as Dave said, goes to Evan Silva as his number 3 quarterback. O.J. Howard and Sam Bradford are the picks after that. Dave's dynasty darling, Joe Williams, going to the 1305 pick. That is Dan Thomas taking Joe Williams tonight. Alex Smith follows him. Jonathan Williams, another Jay Williams, going in this round to Eric Young, followed by Darren McFadden to Rich Rebar. Should be pointed out that Rich does not have Elliott. The Elliott owner is Chuck Root. Did not get McFadden tonight, which Chuck had plenty of times to take him. I don't think he was interested. Rob Kelly right after that to Drew Maselli, and then Kevin White, Antonio Gates, and T.J. Yeldon finishing things off in round 13. The Gates pick is interesting for Brian Holgen as he gets 3 tight ends now on his roster, Hunter Henry, Jason Witten, and Gates. So he pairs Henry with Gates. He will get that San Diego connection, San Diego tight end production there. So that is interesting. And he, I believe, is the only team right now with 3 tight ends. Yes. No, he's one of 2 teams. So with all that early tight end action, we see still only 2 teams with 3 tight ends, and that is Brian Holgen and then Scott Fish, who also has Travis Kelce, Kyle Rudolph, and Cameron Great. So that is the third. Go ahead.
So the Gates pick, it's not. He doesn't really have 3 tight ends. He has 3 tight ends, but he only really has them on 2 teams.
Oh, you're counting the Gates and Henry pick as the same guy.
Yeah, exactly. Complementary.
What about all those Boffo AFC West shootouts where Gates and Henry are each going 5 for 108 and 2 touchdowns?
How many of those were there last year? Nuns?
I don't know.
Nuns?
At least
Nuns?
At least 4.
I guarantee you there was not 4.
It is 3.5. So let's kick off the 14th round. Brian Hoyer is a guy. And I don't want to sit here and say, hey, let's talk about Brian Hoyer for a half hour, Dave. But
he's a talent.
Now he's a guy that hasn't really been going very high, and I think that with Kyle Shanahan brings he hasn't been going high. Kyle Shanahan brings his offense to San Francisco. He brings in Pierre Garçon. I mean, I think that there is something there, and I think if you're waiting and you get Hoyer as your third quarterback in this format, that's fine. Now, who would you rather have there, Brian Hoyer or Jake Rudock? That's the true question.
Rudock.
He had the chance to take Rudock, and he took Hoyer.
You have a good point, though. I mean, Pierre Garçon is now going in the 7th round, and the 7th round. Remember, he was complete garbage last year, 12th round pick, moves to a different team with a much worse quarterback, because Cousins is this elite god of a quarterback, as you've been making him out to be. With Hoyer throwing, and so why is Garçon worth a 7th round pick and Hoyer is worth, junky 14th round pick?
Yeah, maybe their ADP should be closer, or maybe one of them is completely wrong.
They should both be in the 10th.
Oh, maybe. I mean, I don't know. You could make that case.
Yeah, maybe.
And Brian Hoyer throwing to George Kittle, Marquise Goodwin. Maybe
Garçon,
that's it too.
There's literally no one else other than Garçon that might be. He's going to get 180 targets.
Yeah. Well, Joe Williams, is he a pass catcher? I mean, you know Joe Williams inside and out.
Balky, I know you I don't get down to the nuts and bolts of backup running backs who got drafted.
I thought he was a starter.
And affecting wide receiver targets.
Listen.
I know you're really
this is the guy.
You're digging into Vance McDonald's, off-season time and how much time he's spending working out to see how many targets he might get to affect Garçon, but I don't quite go that deep.
Wouldn't that be great for the NFL if they were able to, a lot of these players are wearing GPS monitoring stuff to, know what they should be eating, how much they should be drinking, stuff like that.
How hydrated they are.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if that data was made public? Oh, yeah. Can you imagine, what
kind of like a Pokemon Go?
Not so much.
Hey, Carlos Hyde's at a strip bar right now.
Yeah, I mean that
would be awesome.
I mean, not necessarily we're there, but the data that is, okay,
1 day delay.
Yeah, a 1 day delay. That's fine. But just to see what these guys are eating, see what they're drinking, what they're doing, how much they're working out.
A 24-hour delay would be great because you'd be tracking Carlos Hyde's. He was at a strip bar 24 hours
ago. Well, I'm not saying necessarily
I'm thinking for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, we don't have to monitor location, but actually what their bodies are doing. I think that would be fascinating. Can you imagine people tweeting out holy cow, did you see what Dalvin Cook did on the bench press yesterday? Stuff. It's all public. It'd be so great.
I mean, Dalvin Cook went to KFC and ate a 16-piece bucket and ate it all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's terrible for him. What's he doing?
Yeah. Well, he's young. His metabolism can probably handle it. Moving on to the 14th round, Brian Hoyer. Justin Tucker, the first kicker off the board to Brian Holgen tonight, followed by David Njoku, Thomas Rawls, Jesse James, the tight end for the Steelers, going to Rich Rebar there, and then Jared Goff goes off the board after that.
I don't know why I always laugh at the stupid way you pronounce Goff.
Well, because
it's always funny.
It reminds you of Caddyshack.
It does.
That's why.
Ted Knight. I love Ted Knight.
That's why I always do it. Marquise Lee, the pick right after Jared Goff. Marquise Lee going to Howard Bender. Jamal Williams Back-to-back Jay Williams for Dan Thomas as he gets Jamal Williams in the 14th round. Charles Clay, Deontay Foreman, and Darren Sproles is where we're at right now. You like Darren Sproles this year in Philadelphia, don't you?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Because he's not going very high, and he's going to catch passes. He's part of a pretty good offense on the come up, as the kids say.
You might want to look at Evan Silva's running backs and take a look at Darren Sproles and what he is.
Well, now
Evan Silva, you have got guts, my friend. I love it.
I think we know what one of the
his RB2.
I think
Darren Sproles in the 14th. It was great.
I think we know what one of the talking points on Friday is going to be, because this is interesting. Evan Silva takes his number 2 running back in the 14th round.
That is awesome.
Best ball format, remember. Now you got to believe that he's going to be pounding running backs here, right?
I mean, the fact that he could get Sproles after Deontay
Foreman.
Deonta, I tested negative for pot, and that's a news story yesterday, Foreman. And then before Jacquizz Rodgers, that's amazing. That's a great pick. I love that Sproles pick.
Yeah, it is really strong, to quite strong. I didn't even realize. It's one of those things where I was kind of paying attention, like when we're covering pick by pick.
Right.
And I'm like, oh man, he doesn't have a second running back. He doesn't have a second running back. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then I saw the Sproles pick. I just assumed he had drafted a running back.
There's like 3 more, right?
That I missed.
There's not.
There wasn't.
That
was his number 2. So you got to love that. Jacquizz Rodgers completing the round. That's an interesting pick by Keith Douglas there. So he gets Doug Martin in the 7th round, and then he gets Jacquizz Rodgers in the 14th. These guys are doing a pretty good job of locking up these backfields, these pockets of fantasy points.
Agreed.
Gates and Henry, of course, as we touched on earlier.
Silva then takes a kicker instead of a 3rd running back. I love it.
This is.
I'm telling you, that's the one thing.
It's bananas at this point.
One of my draft experts, one of the things I like to do, I do like to be kind of weak at running back, because then you can be strong in a number of other spots. So if your normally my RB3 is what's kind of weak, but his RB2 is weak. And obviously, his
RB3 is going to be weak too.
RB3, 4, and 5 is probably going to be weak. I mean, I assume he's got some good value guys he's going to go for later. But I actually really like that strategy, because you can be really, really, really strong somewhere else. He's got Le'Veon Bell as his anchor running back. I know I'm evaluating his team a little bit, but I actually like doing that.
Yeah, I really want to evaluate it too, because I think when you look at his team as a whole, you get it. We
can talk about the team and then not talk about it later.
Okay, well,
that goes against your whole. I know it's tough.
I know.
You're very much the guy that does things exactly.
You're just violating my OCD habits right now. But okay, let's throw caution to the wind. I'll just up my medication here and
put that pen right over there.
What are you doing? See, now that is
stuff in your space.
Put a pen right in front of me with the cap off. It's really annoying. Okay, FFPC draft experts, basketball.
Yes.
Tight end premium. He gets 2 tight ends right away in Greg Olsen and Jimmy Graham. PPR format. Loads up on wide receivers. Fitz, Pryor, Macklin, Djax, John Brown.
Big play guys.
Big play guys. Le'Veon Bell, you can make the case that Antonio Brown is what drives the offense, but the offense is really centered around Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh. And then he gets a pass catcher as his number 2 running back. He already has 3. He has number 1 and 2 quarterbacks in fantasy football this year. And then he gets Ryan Tannehill. So as a whole, it works. I mean, I can't really poke a weakness other than that second running back, and running back depth, obviously.
Well, I mean, he overdrafts tight end, not overdrafts, but he spends a lot of draft capital, I would say, on Olsen and Graham, and that's fine. Those guys are top tier players. He did really well. I think he accounted well for the wide receivers by taking Fitz, Pryor, Macklin, Jackson, Brown, Williams. I mean, those 5 are really, really good when you put them all together. The quarterbacks ended up being fantastic. So really his only weakness is at RB2.
Running back depth. Yeah.
And so if Sproles is the guy that he generally is, like 10 points a game with every once in a while he'll get like 15, 20. Sproles is a legitimate like RB2 type player every single year. I mean, that's just what he is. So if he stays, then he'll have some bye week issues, but if he gets any production out of any other running backs whatsoever, he is going to be a dangerous team to be feared and worried about.
Who's the leading fantasy point getter in the Philadelphia backfield this year? Is it?
I would bet that it's Sproles.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I know that, Blount's there and Matthews is still kind of there or whatever. I mean,
and there was a Roto World blurb tonight, Dave, about Wendell Smallwood having a significant role in that offense.
Yeah, it's so uncertain. I mean, the Smallwood seems like a decent value because if Matthews is as bad as they say, Blount is just a journeyman. You never know.
Yeah. Moving on, Dwayne Allen is the next pick, the 1501 as the number 3 tight end for Keith Douglas there. Stephen Gostkowski to Evan Silva, and again, bears mentioning, takes his number 1 kicker ahead of his number 3 running back.
I love it.
God bless the FFPC. Evan Engram and Zach Miller. Zach Miller, who may not make the team in Chicago this year. We'll have to see how that goes. He goes to Mike Beers.
And Evan Engram last night.
Which, by the way, has his number 3 tight end, too.
Yep.
So.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right.
Evan Engram goes where in the 1503. I think he went at the end of the 7th round.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was really early.
Yeah.
I thought that was super early last night. I just wasn't sure. But I really was. I'm like, why is Engram going that early? A rookie tight end is probably going to do absolutely nothing. And I own Engram on a couple of dynasty teams. I'm not that excited about him until next year.
13-12 is where he is going in FFPC.
That makes a lot more sense.
Right
It
now.
makes a lot more sense.
So you get him there at a value, and then the Chiefs' defense right after that to Dan Thomas, followed by Vance McDonald, another tight end that could be a surprise cut this year for the 49ers. Brashad Perriman, we talked about him earlier. You want to talk about locking up pockets of fantasy points? That's exactly what Rich Rebar did, as he gets Kenneth Dixon and Terrence West. Kenneth Dixon in the 11th. He gets Terrence West in the 15th. And then a little bit of a defense run here, Dave, as we're seeing the light blue, the baby blues fly off the board. The baby blue colors: Denver Broncos, Seattle Seahawks, Houston Texans, and Minnesota Vikings to Scott Fish to finish off the 15th round. Are we going to see more defenses in this? Is this the defense run here?
I think it is. If I were either of the last 4 teams, I would definitely pop off another defense right here. I would just keep them going. Because once you do that, I mean, okay, so he's going with a kicker, but once you do that, it really forces everyone else to just go defense, and it just wastes that entire round, and you're fine. You have one of the better defenses, and they're taking like Detroit.
But if you're trying to get 3 defenses, isn't it a little bit overrated to try to get a really, really good one? To get the one of the – because I'm with you on trying to get 3 defenses. But I'm also of the belief that I'm not going to be focusing on getting one of the first defenses off the board. I'm just give me 3 defenses.
Well, I think that there's a case to be made if you can take, like, look at Izzy here. So you got Seattle and New England. Maybe he'll take a third one, maybe not. But I mean, those 2 defenses are really, really, really good. He's going to get like 12 points every week out of it.
Would you be taking a third defense if you had those 2 defenses right now in round 16?
If I had those 2 out and it was coming back to me in the 17th round?
No. I mean, overall, would you be trying to grab another defense?
I would still eventually grab a third one, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's talk about who. There was a guy I wanted to talk about. Oh, Brashad Perriman. We can briefly talk about him because
not him again.
This is a guy that we touched on earlier. He goes in the 15th round tonight, and I do believe that this is a good value, especially in best ball. I feel like Perriman would make sense in a 20-round classic where you have to submit lineups in like the 13th round. You get him in the 15th in the best ball where you don't have to ever have to worry about when to start him and when not to. He's a guy I'm starting to believe in, especially with Macklin's ADP rising. So I just wanted to put that out there.
You know, what's interesting, too, is another receiver taken in the 14th round, Marquise Lee. And last night he was taken after another receiver that hasn't been taken.
Right.
So I know
who may or may not be his real life teammate.
Yeah, exactly. They know who he is, but that's interesting that Lee got drafted in the spot that I kind of more thought he should be getting drafted in tonight.
It just, I mean, these. I don't want to keep tooting the FFPC format's horn, but I will here because.
Oh, hey, Bucky, are there main event openings?
Yeah, there are actually, and you can actually sign up for them at myffpc.com. I hope to see you out at Planet Hollywood live in Las Vegas. It's going to be a great, great time. We're going to have the opening game viewing party out there. We're going to watch the Chiefs-Patriots, which there
are discounts on room rates, and Greg Sidoris is our great VIP host.
Yeah,
former pro baseball player Greg Sidoris.
Shut up! I didn't know that.
You didn't know Greg Sidoris used to play for the Pirates.
Come on, when? And this is our Casino Connection guy in Vegas.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know this.
You're so funny.
I never would have left his side. I would have been picking his brain. When did he play for him?
I don't know. When?
My God, this is insane to me. All right, anyway.
You're hilarious.
Well, how the hell did nobody tell me this? We were hanging out with a former pro baseball player in Vegas.
Who cares? We don't care.
Me! I care. I care.
Star blanker.
Listen, I don't. You know me. When I don't judge people based on how they act or what they do. It's what they've done, their accomplishments. I don't really care about kindness and anything like that. It's just, wow, you're a former pro baseball player?
I'll have to look and see. I'm pretty sure he played for the Pirates.
All right, well, whatever. Let's move on.
Do they have a pro baseball reference here or anything?
Yeah, baseball reference. Baseballreference.com.
Go ahead.
Let's go on in the 16th round. Matt Bryant is.
You know what? I just found Greg on LinkedIn. I'm going to connect with him
him. See if it's on there. Does he have his?
I'm going to look. I'm going to look while we're on this.
Oh,
Clayton Gray. Hey, thanks, Flag. I have a connection. Sure.
Okay. Anyway, Matt Bryant was the first selection of the 16th round. Tyler Lockett goes right after him to Brian Holgen. And then you have three more defenses, Dave. Here they come. Patriots defense, Cardinals defense, Panthers defense right after that. Chris Hogan, the Patriots receiver, to Eric Young here in the 16th, followed by Tom Savage, who is the number 3 quarterback, to Howard Bender. So Howard Bender waited on quarterback, waited. He was the last one to take his first one, which he did in round 12 with Carson Wentz. He ends up with Carson Wentz, Alex Smith, and Tom Savage. Not a bad lineup for quarterback play. And I'm of the same belief here. If I'm trying to get 3 quarterbacks, I'm less focused on getting an elite one. Just as long as I have 3, they're somewhat stable. I mean, you can make the case that Tom Savage's job is not very stable. Actually, you can kind of make the case that Alex Smith's job might not be very stable if they give the job to Mahomes if they drop out of playoff contention in late November, early December. So there is that there as well. Will Lutz, Adam Vinatieri, Dan Bailey, 3 straight kickers, and then the Steelers defense, and Robert Woods. Man, we talk about him a lot. I really like this pick. Another great pick by Keith Douglas here to get Robert Woods at the 16-12 tonight, Dave. A guy who is the de facto number 1 receiver there.
It's not a bad pick. I like Robert Woods there as well, actually, Bucky. I can't even argue with that. Although the problem with Robert Woods is he's never, coming out of USC, he's never really done it. He's never been that great. Never had a 1,000-yard season, has he? I mean, I don't think he has. He's always just been this guy who gets his, certain number of targets and then never puts up. If you need a 7 for 140 and a touchdown a week, are you going to get it out of Robert Woods? No. You're going to get like a 3 for 40 and maybe a touchdown if you're lucky.
Yeah, but I mean, okay. So maybe this format doesn't really play to his skill set because he is more of like a Frank Gore-ish, Steady Eddie type guy rather than the explosive type, Rashad Perriman or Devery Henderson, to keep bringing that guy's name up over and over again.
So Greg Sidoris, I can't find his info. Maybe he locked it down. So let's not embarrass him. Well, let's ask Alex and we'll find out. But I'm pretty sure I thought he played for the Pirates for some.
Did he make the majors or was he just
I think
in there?
So. I don't think he was. I don't think he was
career minor leaguer.
Yeah, I think he was Bull Durham or whatever. Crash Davis or anything.
Crash Davis. Was he?
Who, by the way, was a record holder for most home runs in the minors after he knocked that one out for the Durham Bulls.
Was he more Crash Davis or more Nuke LaLoosh for his career?
I don't think he had $1 million arm and a 10-cent head like Nuke.
He definitely doesn't have a 10-cent head. I can tell you that.
He's got a very lovely wife, girlfriend. Greg's great. Greg's so fun to deal with.
Yeah, he's great. Mohamed Sanu is the 1701 pick tonight, Dave, and followed by the Jaguars defense. J.J. Nelson is the pick after that. J.J. Nelson, a guy that Danny Mueller, noted FFPC DE player, was all over last year late in drafts, and it actually worked out for him for 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. I don't know if he's been drafting him this year. Or maybe I do, and I don't want to say.
Maybe.
Caleb Sturgis, Eric Swope.
Nice pick, Swope.
Your
pick.
Boy, Eric Swope from last
He's
night.
The best.
The guy, there's a better tight end that's still out there on the board, so congratulations to whoever gets him. Tim Hightower is the pick after Swope, followed by the Eagles defense. And I see LAC, and I want to say Clippers, like the fantasy basketball
the Clips.
in me. Yeah, so the Clippers.
They got Blake Griffin here.
Yeah, the Clippers defense. Boy, how are they going to be after they lost strong safety Chris Paul to the Rockets? That's going to be a tough blow, yeah. Zay Jones right after that. Austin Safarian Jenkins is the tight end going as the number 3 tight end to Team 10, which is Izzy Alcafas. Taylor Gabriel and Mason Crosby to finish round 17. Taylor Gabriel, Dave.
17 rounds in 90 minutes. So impressive.
Yeah, these guys know what's up, as it were. Taylor Gabriel, this was in the blurb, another blurb. This is the blurb episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football.
This should be part of the drinking game.
About how Marquise Goodwin could have like a significant role as the speed merchant in San Francisco.
I radio rolled my eyes there.
Yeah, but this is a guy, his skill set is similar to Taylor Gabriel's, and Gabriel is a guy that not only had a pretty good season last year for Atlanta with Kyle Shanahan, who's now in San Francisco. Taylor Gabriel is a guy and I can't remember if I brought this up on the show last night.
Football.
Plays football.
Knows how to play football.
Knows how to play
Marquise
football.
Goodwin.
Gabriel's been rising up draft boards.
Yes, he's a good football player. Marquise Goodwin is a good sprinter.
Okay. So you are not buying the whole Goodwin could be the Niners version of Gabriel.
I don't think so. Goodwin sucks. I mean, he's never done anything in the NFL. What, is he going to all of a sudden get good?
Well, you're also talking about you hardly have to invest anything into him, too. There's a lot of the guys that are going to be picked now as we move forward in the second half of this draft that have never done anything in the league.
He's ready for a takeoff season, according to Jeremy Curley.
Yeah, there you go. And Jeremy Curley, his teammate, he knows what's going on.
3 weeks ago, Marquise Goodwin was vacationing in Egypt with noted socialist Colin Kaepernick.
God. I'm sorry I brought up Goodwin.
Look,
Giants defense first off the
fantasy
board.
Players are not
in
big
the
fans
18th
of
round.
Kaepernick. Then they came back and landed in Cuba.
That's fine. I just don't want to it has nothing to do with high stakes fantasy football, so I really don't care. That said, do you think Colin Kaepernick is drafted tonight, Dave?
He should be, whatever.
Because that is interesting.
He's the boss.
Yeah. Giants defense at the 1801. Kenny Stills at the 1802 tonight. Sebastian Janikowski right after that, and then Giovanni Bernard falling all the way down to the 18th round. Do you like him there?
In the 18th round, I guess.
I mean, assume he's popped. You know, you're not going to.
He could be the number 3 running. He could have been the number 3 running back for Evan Silva.
Yeah, that's true. He could have been. Wow, that's insane.
This YouTube got a little blurry here.
It's going in and out.
All right, sir.
He takes 2 defenses before taking his third running back.
That's all right. You know what? Good for him.
I want to just keep saying this over and over again because it's just so it's so fantastic.
He's trying to prove a point.
Will Fuller after that, followed by a flurry of defenses here. Buccaneers, Dolphins, Curtis Samuel, followed by the Rams, right? God, it's tripping me up again. I complained about this last night. I'm staring at L.A. I'm like, who the hell is that?
Last night the Rams were drafted first.
Yeah, I know. The Rams and then the Falcons defense right after this. I think after the 18th round, can you switch your readout to not have the YouTube and get the full draft board, and we'll do some team analysis here?
Oh,
We're coming up on that time.
Sure.
We have about 25 minutes to go, and
no problem.
I don't want to rush through it like we rushed through it last night. DeAndre Washington, the penultimate pick of the 18th round. Were you in the chat room when Kern, FFPC player Kern Reeve posted what the third to last one?
Yes.
The third and fourth. Okay.
I actually taught my kids that.
Oh, that's what
I taught them.
Yeah.
It's what is it? So it's the.
I don't know.
It's the penultimate, and then it's the
quadrupenultimate.
No, it's the antepenultimate.
Okay.
And then there was something else. You know what? Ella would remember. Ella's smart. I'm not smart anymore.
Isn't the antepenultimate the ultimate?
No, the ultimate is the last one.
I know.
Penultimate is second last. Antepenultimate is the, I think, third last. And then there's something else that's like the fourth last. It's the blah, 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 penultimate.
I think
something else.
I think you nailed it.
No, I didn't.
So let's talk about some team analysis and go on and see how these Joes and pros built their teams. Once again, first place will get a 2018 FFPC main event team that's valued at a $1,750 value, and this is something we talked about last night. There is nothing for second place. You do want to kind of shoot for the moon and make sure that you are getting your highest upside, go for broke, play for first, not for third, whatever. And I think you're seeing a lot of teams do that tonight. So let's kick.
Fourth last is pre-antepenultimate.
Pre-antepenultimate. Okay.
So
what was third last? Antepenultimate.
Antepenultimate. Okay. So ridiculous. You know what was ridiculous is that he knew it. He just knew it off the top of his head.
He's a smart guy, professor at Cornell.
Yeah. Saying he's a smart guy is like saying that Shaq is tall. I mean, it's like, yeah, he's a brilliant professor.
Yes. So let's talk about how these guys built their teams. Keith Douglas kicking things off from the one spot tonight. Running backs, thank you so much. Running backs, David Johnson, Dalvin Cook, Doug Martin, LeGarrette Blount, Jacquizz Rodgers. Receivers, Des Bryant, Amari Cooper, Julian Edelman, Randall Cobb. Tight ends, Martellus Bennett, Jared Cook, Dwayne Allen. Quarterbacks, James Winston, Carson Palmer. I'm going to tell you why I like this team, Dave. Not just because it got Robert Woods late. I feel like if I was in this format, this is what one of my teams would end up looking like. I feel like this is a very bulky-ish team.
It is, because you get the running back early.
Yep.
And then you kind of punt on it a little bit for a while.
Get the receivers.
I thought Cook was a really nice pick in the 5th round there. I thought
you are just all over Cook.
I do like, I know I hated on him after his bad performance in the combine, but I've really come around.
Yeah.
And Doug Martin I thought was solid. Actually, I like this team. I think it worked out pretty well. My concern, of course, is with Bennett getting enough targets. I don't think Jared Cook's all that great, and Dwayne Allen also is not all that awesome. But I think he could be okay. I think it's going to be tough for him to compete for the overall, but I think he might be all right in this league. He might do okay here.
Are we doing anything for the overall? We always talk about doing something.
I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, there's some sort of recognition.
Well, you just get a blurb in the FFPC email letter.
Yeah, okay, remember in the social network when, Mark Zuckerberg's like, I do believe I deserve some recognition. And they're like, yes, for what? And he says, for crashing the Harvard system. And they're like, excuse me, but you didn't crash the system. We knew about it right away. He's like, well, you were known about it sooner. I just looked at my window.
That's great. Are we going to skip
I do believe I deserve some recognition.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Skip Evan Silva's team because we talked about it already.
I like his team quite a bit. Even with, obviously his running backs are weak.
Yeah. Who was his number 3? DeAndre Washington. And then you got Shane Vereen. That's fine. I mean, when you're waiting that long and getting guys like that, Washington could be the starter by like week 3.
Anything's possible. If those things happen, watch out.
Shane Vereen could be the starter, by the way. Nobody's talking about that.
No, I know.
So, interesting. Team 3. Naked time. Let's have some naked time, Dave, with Chuck Root. Naked time with Chuck Root. Running backs, Ezekiel Elliott, Jordan Howard, Paul Perkins, Latavius Murray, Deontay Foreman. Receivers, Doug Baldwin, Golden Tate, Stephon Diggs, Corey Davis, Josh Doxson. Tight ends, Jack Doyle, O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram. Quarterbacks, Andrew Luck, Joe Flacco. A lot of youth on this team. I'm just looking at you have Elliott and Howard who are in their second year. You have Paul Perkins in his second year. Davis is a rookie. Doxson is in his second year, but really is rookie season. O.J. Howard's a rookie. Evan Ingram's a rookie. Deontay Foreman's a rookie. Maybe this is a case of going with the unknown guys to try to win this whole thing by catching lightning in a bottle, not once, not twice, but several times.
Yeah, I think this is the type of team that like a dynasty owner would generally take because he knows all these young guys.
Does Chuck Root play dynasty?
I don't know if he does. I don't think he does. But
maybe he should have got it out of his system before this Bros versus Joes.
Exactly. Jeff Turabasi once told me, he's a high stakes player who plays dynasty as well. He always says, the toughest thing about starting to play dynasty is once you play dynasty and you're drafting all these rookies, it's really tough to switch into redraft.
Yeah.
So I just feel like that's kind of where Chuck's at here with this team, but. My problem is with O.J. Howard and Ingram as your second and third tight ends. When you already have a kind of a garbagey Jack Doyle as your number 1 tight end, I thought Luck was a nice value. I think he might have a little bit of a struggle at tight end. I thought Perkins was a nice pick too, but I'm not really sure about the tight end overall here.
Yeah, and if you're like Chuck Root and you really feel yourself drafting dynasty teams rather than redraft teams in redraft formats, we have dynasty leagues starting up all summer long at the FFPC. Check it out, myffpc.com. The leagues start at $77. They go up from there. More than 140 leagues. Not one of them has ever folded. So you can definitely get in on the dynasty fun still this summer at myffpc.com.
I'm enjoying your marketing.
I knew it wouldn't.
I'm enjoying how annoying it is.
If the prognosticator is here, he'd be like, "Why are we doing more of this? Like we should be talking more about like Balky gets it. He's doing it right. You're just sitting there,
you just go right into
making
it.
fun of him or whatever. He's got it. He's doing it." Mike Beers from RotoViz is Team 4 tonight. He gets DeMarco Murray, Todd Gurley, Mark Ingram, Matt Forte, Jonathan Stewart at running back. Receivers are Antonio Brown, Alshon Jeffrey, Tyreek Hill, Kenny Britt, Ted Ginn. Tight ends, Kobe Fleener, Charles Clay, Zach Miller. So you look at this team, Dave, and I think you and I are both going to have good things to say about it because he's got guys like Tyreek Hill and he has guys like Kenny Britt for me and Kobe Fleener, for God's sake. So you look at the squad, and he waited on tight end. To get Kobe Fleener as your number 1, I'm not crazy about that. He does get Clay late, which I like. I'm worried about Zach Miller. So I can get on board with the backs and receivers and quarterbacks on this team, no question. Which, by the way, Drew Brees and Sam Bradford are the quarterbacks, in case I didn't mention them. Again, the tight ends are going to be crucial to this team's success.
It's funny. Mike Beers actually almost did the opposite of Team 3, where he just took a ton of proven veteran-type players. Now, granted, Tyreek Hill's a young fella. But, you got Forte and Stewart. Those guys have played in the NFL for a long time. You know what? Every once in a while, they put up good games. They produce. who knows? Maybe Forte actually does put up a better season than Bill Powell. Maybe Stewart does hold off McCaffrey.
Yeah. I like the Stewart pick.
And Ted Ginn and Kenny Britt, they've been hanging around the league for long enough. They put up good games. It does happen. Charles Clay even. So I actually like this team as kind of a little bit of a sleeper team.
Yeah. Ginn is great for this format and the fact that he's in New Orleans now. And Jonathan Stewart, I think, like even from a classic, like a 20-round perspective, I think he'll be fine for his price tag. Dan Thomas, the Hammerheads here drafting out of the 5 spot. The running backs are Isaiah Crowell, Spencer Ware, Amir Abdullah, Kareem Hunt, Joe Williams, Jamal Williams. Receivers Julio Jones, T.Y. Hilton, Cam Meredith, Quincy Enunwa, and Curtis Samuel. Tight ends are Tyler Eifert, C.J. Fedorowicz, and Eric Swope. This is an interesting team because it's a good mix of guys I really like and guys I really hate. So it's tough for me to handicap. I'm somewhat concerned with the running backs, although I think he's going to be fine there. I think that there's some pretty good depth there. I would have liked to see a 5th receiver above Curtis Samuel, but I think his top 4 are definitely solid. He does get Brady early, which helps. Bortles as his backup is, whatever. I mean, I don't know if he's going to hang on to the job or not. And then Eifert, you and I.
Who's going to take the job from Bortles?
Somebody else. I mean, it's so bad. Eifert, I like. Fedorowicz, I'm not a huge fan of, and I know you like Swope, so I'll let you talk about Dan Thomas' team here.
I don't really like Swope all that much, but I like him as a late sleeper.
Yeah.
I like Dan's team, actually. There's a lot of players, actually, that I like on his team. I like Enunwa, I like Meredith, T.Y. Hilton, Julio. Spencer Ware with Kareem Hunt is nice. So you have Crowell, Abdullah. Abdullah really needs to come through for him, so I think he will. I think he will, actually, too. Eifert needs to stay healthy. If he does, I mean, he's in really good shape. I like this team overall. Pretty good balance, actually, too.
Seeing
and Joe Williams is a nice, Joe Williams is like a kind of a freebie sleeper type guy that our buddy over there, Josh Drumaselli, you guys should have taken Joe Williams. You kind of botched it.
Well, hey, listen, they're the insiders.
Should have taken him in the 12th round.
They're the insiders, man. They know better than us.
Well, I like Corey Coleman in the 12th by Maselli.
Howard Bender from FantasyAlarm.com, LaShawn McCoy, Leonard Fournette, Marshawn Lynch, Jeremy Hill, Tim Hightower. Receivers, Keenan Allen, Martavis Bryant, Devontae Parker, Kelvin Benjamin, Adam Thielen, Marvin Jones, Marquise Lee. Tight ends, Austin Hooper to Vance McDonald. Quarterbacks, Carson Wentz, Alex Smith, Tom Savage. So Howard went heavy with the running back and receiver stack. He took a lot of, I think polarizing is pretty accurate description of a lot of these players. Leonard Fournette, a rookie in the mid-second round. Keenan Allen coming off another significant injury. Marshawn Lynch coming off a year where he didn't play football. Same thing with Martavis Bryant. Devontae Parker, can he do it? Can he not? Kelvin Benjamin, another guy that either you love him or you hate him. Most people hate him. Adam Thielen is another. I mean, Thielen is a good value in the 8th round there. And then, we know your thoughts on Marvin Jones. So there's a lot of potential on this team.
Marquise Lee's not bad either.
And Marquise Lee is a good pick there. There's a lot of potential on this team. I do see some pretty significant possible pitfalls, though.
Yeah, I kind of like the team construction, the way that he went running back early, mid-rounds with the wide receivers, waited on tight end, and then waited a super long time on quarterback. I think he's actually going to be okay at quarterback. Not so sure about tight end. I think he might have problems there.
Yep, I'm with you on both those.
Running back, I think he'll be good. I don't like the Lynch pick. Sorry, I just don't like Lynch. There's a number of the wide receivers I'm just not big fans of. But if you throw enough of them against the wall, some of them I'm going to be wrong on, and a number of them I'll probably be wrong on for sure.
Eric Young in FFPC Joe drafting from the 7th spot tonight takes C.J. Anderson, Duke Johnson, Samaje Perine, Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Williams at running back. The receivers, Odell Beckham, Jordy Nelson, Demaryius Thomas, Jamison Crowder, Tavon Austin, Rashad Perriman, Chris Hogan. Tight ends, Delaney Walker, Julius Thomas, and the quarterbacks are Russell Wilson and Jared Goff. A little bit weak at quarterback. I'm not a fan of the tight end depth here, and this is kind of like an upside-down type team where he ended up hitting the receivers pretty hard early and then picked up some running backs in the mid-rounds. And I think the running backs actually, he might be all right there. You only have to start 2 of them a week, and there's some potential there between, Kamara, Perine, Duke Johnson, C.J. Anderson. And the receivers are obviously very, 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 very good.
Yeah, I'm concerned about running back. I'm actually concerned about quarterback. Yeah, I think that he kind of made a little bit of a strategic mistake by not taking a quarterback in round, 12 and 13. Just because there's a run going on, you don't have to be, obtuse and just totally ignore quarterback. I think he should have taken one there. And then you end up with Jared Goff, a guy who could barely throw it for a couple hundred yards. So if Wilson gets hurt, your team is over with.
Yeah.
It's done for. And I think running back, that, like I said, I think C.J. Anderson is your number one, and without having a whole lot behind that, it can be problematic.
Do you remember last year when it was right around this time we were talking about how Russell Wilson had bulked up, like added muscle to his frame, and then
fat,
and then he got hurt last season. He was playing hurt with that lower leg injury, and now we hear the news that he's cut down to 10% body fat.
He's fighting with his wife.
Well, we don't need to.
That's why I got.
Don't air your dirty laundry on this show, Dave.
My wife and I get along fantastically.
Famously, I would say.
Yeah,
Rich Rebar from Roto World had the 8th pick tonight, and he goes Mike Gillislee, Eddie Lacy, Frank Gore, Kenneth Dixon, Darren McFadden, Terrence West at running back. Starts off with 5 straight receivers: A.J. Green, Michael Thomas, Sammy Watkins, Allen Robinson, Devontae Adams. Doesn't take another until Will Fuller in the 18th. And then you have tight ends Eric Ebron and Jesse James as the tight ends there. You look at this squad, Dave, and it was another, again, upside-down team where the receivers go first. He filled in the cracks at the running backs. I'm worried about the tight end depth. Once again, I feel like this is a recurring theme on this show, but I feel like the running backs he did a pretty good job on, and the receivers are obviously dominant.
I mean, with Devontae Adams as your WR5, I mean, I actually think that that's so good, it's kind of bad. Like, that you really kind of
hurts your other aspects.
Yeah, you kind of over-sacrificed in other spots where you didn't really need to be that unbalanced. I mean, it was great to take Adams and get him as your number 5, but then you end up punting wide receiver the whole rest of the way. So now there's a possibility that during bye weeks, maybe a couple of them have bye weeks and you're not doing all that great. I would have probably gone a few different directions, but I mean, nevertheless, A.J. Green, Thomas, Watkins, Robinson, Adams, that's so solid. That might carry you for a ways. Once again, after Ebron, though, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah, it's not a great situation. But again, with those receivers all being the focal points of their passing games, he could.
I think he did well to get Gore there too, and Gore and Lacy. I mean, there's just steady Eddies. If those guys pan out, he's in good shape.
Pun intended. Steady Eddie.
They are steady Eddies.
Steady Frankie. Drew Maselli picking at the 9 spot tonight gets Ty Montgomery, Carlos Hyde, Theo Riddick, James White, Rob Kelly, Thomas Rawls, Giovanni Bernard. Receivers are Jarvis Landry, Michael Crabtree, Brandon Marshall, Corey Coleman, Zay Jones. Tight ends, Rob Gronkowski, Jordan Reed. Quarterbacks, Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott. This team...
You have nothing to say about it?
It's
very tough to evaluate a team like this. Because of Gronk and Reed, it's just tough to put them as number 1 and 2 because you just can't... It's tough to say, oh, this team's going to score a lot or not, because now one of the flex positions is automatically taken by Reed.
Yeah. I like the pass catchers in Riddick and White when you don't take a second running back until round 7 and Carlos Hyde. You still get Riddick, you still get White. That makes sense. You get guys who could be the starters on their teams fairly late, Rob Kelly and Thomas Rawls. And then, Giovanni Bernard, whatever he provides when he is able to come back. On the receivers, I mean, I'm not a huge Corey Coleman fan, but for, having him as your number 4 with Marshall, Crabtree, and Landry, probably banking you some pretty good points week in and week out there. It makes sense. I don't dislike this team. I'm definitely not in love with it, but it's again, you're right. It's tough to evaluate with that Gronk and Reed pick 1 and 2.
When I look at his running backs, combined, they actually are pretty decent because when you take Montgomery, there's uncertainty there. Hyde, uncertainty there. White, you're not really sure. Kelly, you're not really sure. There's sort of so much uncertainty, but there's so many of them that I feel like that they're going to pan out. And Ryan and Prescott are fine. Tight ends are fantastic. And Landry, Crabtree, and Marshall are all like just steady, great football players.
Right.
I do like this team. I think this team will surprise people.
It's growing on me. It's growing on me. Perhaps it's your dinner partner love that has.
It's the wine talking.
Yeah, it's the wine talking about Drew Maselli's team, but I am starting to like it more that I look at it.
It's very unconventional. It's tough to look at. It's tough to look at and be like, oh, this is great.
Right. Izzy Alkafis from DynastyTradeCalculator.com. He goes with Devontae Freeman, Christian McCaffrey, Tevin Coleman, Adrian Peterson, Derrick Henry at running back. Receivers are DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, Jordan Matthews, Kevin White. Tight ends are Zach Ertz, David Njoku, and Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and the quarterbacks Cam Newton, Derek Carr, Eli Manning. Love the quarterbacks here, Dave. It makes a lot of sense, and for the fact that he takes Ertz early and then waits and still gets Njoku and Seferian-Jenkins, there's a lot of upside there in grabbing both those guys, so I like that. Running backs, I'm a big fan of. I think that there's some really good depth here. These are guys that are going to catch passes, and they make a lot of sense. And then the receivers, I think, is the question mark for me, having Kevin White as your number 4, Jordan Matthews as your number 3.
I think I would have liked Izzy's team more had he gotten rid of, because out of what did he have? The first 8 rounds, he took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 running backs. I think if he had taken 3 running backs and 5 receivers, it would have been, and 4 receivers even, it would have been much better outcome. I just would have liked it a lot more. Mm-hmm. He got rid of Coleman and taken like Sanders or Snead. Got rid of AP, because granted, I don't like AP, and taking Garcon. Now you have like Freeman, McCaffrey, and Henry. That's pretty solid with those other receivers. I think that would have been a team I would have looked at like, wow, I really like this team a lot. I think he's a little bit overstacked on running backs, and a couple of them I don't like. It's my fault. I don't like those guys. Yeah. He could be okay. I like Henry. I think that's a solid pick there in the A.
FFPC format, remember, 2 running backs start as well as 2 flexes, so he could conceivably be starting 4 running backs every week on this team, and that strategy could pay off. Dude Platinum, that's Brian Holgen, and he was drafting from the 11 spot tonight. He goes with Melvin Gordon, Lamar Miller, Bilal Powell, C.J. Procise at running back. Receiver, Mike Evans, Emmanuel Sanders, Pierre Garcon, Rashard Matthews, Tyler Lockett, Taylor Gabriel. Tight ends, Hunter Henry, Jason Witten, Antonio Gates, that's apparently only 2 tight ends in the Gerzak analysis. Aaron Rodgers and Phillip Rivers are the quarterbacks. I'm fine with the quarterbacks. They make a lot of sense. I'm fine with the tight ends. I think he did a good job there. You and I are not big Lamar Miller guys, but we are big Bilal Powell guys. C.J. Procise makes some sense there, and I think he did a good job with the receivers and getting Garcon and Sanders as his 2 and 3. So I can get on board with this team. Not my favorite, but definitely one that should compete.
I look at the quarterback and tight ends, and I don't see 3 quarterbacks. I don't see 3 tight ends. So I have a little bit of a problem with that. I know that Henry and Gates technically equal 2. But, and Rodgers is a fantastic starting quarterback, but I think you need a third, and I think that's problematic. I think Mark Moyer has proved that in the past. I mean, he's the guy who's really pioneered that. Evans is great. Gordon, Miller, Powell, Procise, those running backs are fine. Receivers are a little bit weak, even with the other stuff going on there. I'm not sure. Again, I feel like people are overdrafting like a guy like Procise. You should maybe gotten somebody else there instead.
Scott Fish from Fanball, this is interesting because he had to pinch hit sort of quasi-last minute for Tim McCullough, so he was not prepared for this. But, Scott Fish, he's probably prepared for anything, anytime. And he came in to draft Jeff from 12 spot. Jay Ajayi, Joe Mixon, Danny Woodhead, TJ Yeldon. The receivers are Willie Snead, Dante Moncrief, Eric Decker, Mike Wallace. Tight ends, Travis Kelce, Kyle Rudolph, Cameron Brate, and the quarterbacks, Tyrod Taylor, Matthew Stafford, Brian Hoyer, and what we think is going to be Jake Rudock in the 28th round. We could just go ahead and put that on the board right now. So I like the quarterbacks. I'm going to love them even more when Rudock joins the squad. I love the tight ends, obviously. Good job there. The receivers, I think, for waiting until round 5, he did all right. Snead is my number 1. That actually could work out. I'd just be a little skittish having that right now. But I like Eric Decker. I like Mike Wallace there. And then the question mark I have is running back with Ajayi, Mixon, Woodhead, and Yeldon as his top 4.
I'm not as worried about running back as I am wide receiver. I just think that I'm not a big believer in Moncrief. Snead as your number 1 is problematic. Decker and Wallace as 3 and 4, it's okay, but it's just nothing to get super excited about. I think that taking Rudolph at the 312, I think that was a little bit of an overdraft on a tight end. I know that Rudolph had a fine season, but really Rudolph has been a complete bust until last year. So now you're counting on him and Bradford to hook up again this year, and I think that it's a tad bit early there for him.
There were 30 receivers taken in this draft before Scott Fish took his first one. 31st receiver off the board, Willie Snead. So that is interesting. So between that and Evan Silva's rabbit out of a hat that he's been pulling here out of the 2 spot tonight with not taking his second running back until round 14.
Tough to handicap a winner here.
Henry Muda was telling me the other day that he went in a Football Guys draft. He didn't take his first running back until round 10. I thought that was insane. But then to not take your second running back until round 14, that's almost equally as unheard of.
He didn't take this first until round 10.
Yeah, I didn't tell you this.
But that's more crazy than what Silva's doing.
Okay, well, fair enough.
He still took Bell. Who's your? Give me your top 3 teams.
I don't know, man.
Volky, I know you don't like to do that.
Yeah, I don't. Now I got to find a way to weave all 12 of these teams into a 12-way tie.
Personally, I like the teams that start with an odd number, and then also the even numbers are pretty good too.
I'll tell you this. I think that if you look at the Joes in this draft with Keith Douglas and Chuck Root and Brian Holgen, Eric Young, Dan Thomas, and Drew Maselli, I think if you look at what they did, their strategy really paid off quite a bit for all 6 of those. So I really like those 6 teams, and it's tough for me to pick a front runner. But then you look at the pros, and you look at what Evan Silva did, building up all that capital with the receivers, from rounds 4 to 9, building all that up. You look at what Mike Beers did, getting guys like Tyreek Hill, Kenny Britt, Jonathan Stewart. I mean, 2 guys that I really like, and Britt and Stewart there. Those were great picks that really helped fortify his squad. Howard Bender was fantastic, getting Martavis Bryant, a guy that I really liked this year, and LaShawn McCoy, one of my favorite first-round running backs. So he was great. Rich Rebar was also fantastic, getting maybe the best receiving core in this entire league. And then Izzy Alkafis, despite calling in and saying like, oh yeah, I missed on that Hopkins pick, I was going to take him anyway, and he still recovered enough to get guys like McCaffrey, Coleman, who could have really dominant teams. The one team that I think it sucks is Scott Fish. Otherwise,
Fish, you got
nothing good to say about that. No, I'm just kidding.
You know what? You know whose team I like the best? Scott Fish.
Yeah, actually, see, we even out. That's how it works.
They're all very good.
Ladies and gentlemen,
guys, good job.
Yeah, that is going to do it for our show tonight. I want to thank Izzy Alkafis and Drew Maselli for giving us a buzz tonight. Really appreciate that. I want to thank the FFPC, Darren Armani, our producer and mutual friend Rob, our audio engineer Bryce. Most of all of our listeners who tuned in for this. As a reminder, tomorrow we will be back on the air an hour later. It is at 10/9 Central tomorrow. We will have Pros versus Joes number 3. That is the No More Half Measures draft. We'll have the pros will be made up of Pat Thorman from Pro Football Focus, J.J. Zachariason from Numberfire, Josh Moore from 4 for 4. RotoWire's Chris Liss, RotoGrinders Josh Hornsby, you know him as Fantasy ADHD on Twitter, Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers as well. The Joes will be made up with Barry Griffiths, Dan Williamson, Overhyped Sleeper on Twitter, Trevor Ross, Ryan Santos, who is at FF Links on Twitter, John Rozek, who we've had on the show before, and then, of course, the guy I'm going to screw up his name over and over again, Sean Zidrakowski, will be drafting.
Sean Z,
well.
dude.
You can check out all these draft boards at myffpc.com, the boards there, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC social media accounts as well. Those will be uploaded tomorrow. I want to wish a happy birthday to Jason Goldman, one half of the Day Drinkers. Probably did a little bit of day drinking on a Monday today. It is his birthday, so happy birthday to you, Jason. Remember to make your Planet Hollywood reservation now. Sign up for the main event. You only have a few hours left to make sure you get that early draft spot. We're playing by next weekend. Satellite, Fastballs, Championship. All myFFPC.com for Tuesday officially.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myFFPC.com that was broadcast live and heard around the world. Eric and Dave will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from a guest much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Him again, the sound the engine in is like a bird. You see fireworks and Corvette tires skirt the boulevard. I know how you work, I know just who you are. See, use a bitch, your hormones probably switch inside your DNA.
What do you have a problem with Kendrick Lamar?
No, actually, I like him.
Well, what? This has been our outro for quite a while, and now you.
Yeah, I'm finally noticing.
Dave Gerzak, Master of Perception.
Not a cop.
Progressive brings you Flowetry with Flo.
When Flo flows, she flows in the know. Mind ruminates the rates. Shown them all, I heed the call. Seeing the rest, I choose the best. Sometimes it's R, sometimes it's not. When the fox walks, is it called a fox trot? That's a real question.
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Progressive brings you Flowetry with Flow.
When Flo flows, she flows in the know. Mind ruminates the rates. Shown them all, I heed the call. Seeing the rest, I choose the best. Sometimes it's R, sometimes it's not. When the fox walks, is it called a fox trot? That's a real question.
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.